Chapter 8:18. And most importantly, this Mo roughing, no matter how excessive the things he does, in the polar domain, no one will be moved by him. Under the fierce attack, the Qianquan mirror is about to be thoroughly eroded by the upper evil water. At this moment, a gale sweeps through the entire hole. The whistling sound of the wind is accompanied by a pressure that can topple mountains and overturn the seas, shrouding everyone present. One by one, Mo Roofing's men fall to the ground, vomiting blood. Just a moment later, they breathe their last. Mo Roofing falls to the ground, his body twitching incessantly, blood gurgling out of the corner of his mouth. Immediately after, a foot steps on his chest. With a crack, his ribs are directly broken. The man's deep and dignified voice rings out in the deathly silence, making people's souls tremble. A waste like you also wants to take Ben June away. Mo Roofing's gaze slowly moves up, finally falling on Di Mingju's incomparably handsome, dignified face. Pfft! A mouthful of blood suddenly spurts out. No, impossible, how could you appear? Aren't you in Yanwu? Yanwu continent. Compared to Mo Roofing's shock and amazement, Elder Chang and the others are overjoyed, and they all kneel down. Greetings, Jun Shang. Jun Shang, you've finally returned. Are you all right? Di Mingju doesn't pay attention to Elder Chang and the others' salutations. Instead, he looks at Mo Roofing under his feet with an ice-cold gaze. It seems that Ben Jun was too lenient towards you before. Mo Roofing was originally sure that Di Mingju wouldn't kill him. Even Di Mingju's men didn't dare to make a move against him. But at this moment, when he comes into contact with Di Mingju's bone-chilling eyes, he shudders. He can realize that this time, Di Mingju really wants to kill him. He really wants his life. No, you can't kill me, your life was saved by my parents. Di Mingju, you can't be ungrateful. In order to save you, my parents didn't even care about my life and death. Di Mingju, you promised my parents that you would take good care of me. You want to go back on your word. Di Mingju condescendingly looks down at him, the corner of his mouth hooks up into a cold smile. Don't worry, not only will Ben Jun not kill you, but I will also properly worship you. However, don't even think about Zijin Palace and your cultivation in the future. No. Di Mingju, you can't treat me like this. Oh. Mo Roofing let out a heart-wrenching scream and quickly collapsed to the ground. He twitched a few times and fainted. Di Mingju has directly wasted more than half of his cultivation. The entire hall was as silent as cicadas in winter. Even Elder Chang and the others didn't dare to breathe loudly. Old Man Ji felt cold all over, as if he would faint at any time. Only Ying Mei and Han Yi, who are standing on the side, can't get used to it. Wasn't Mo Roofing courting death? Jun Shang and Miss Jun are currently in love with each other, unable to part from each other. Mo Roofing actually dared to destroy the Qianquan mirror, forcing Di Mingju to be separated from Mayan. And now that more than half of the Qianquan mirror has been destroyed, Di Mingju would no longer be able to go to the Yanwu continent to reunite with Mayan in a short period of time. How could he not be angry? He simply hates it to the point that he wants to go crazy, okay? Chapter 8:19. With just a piece of trash like him. What a joke. Di Mingju orders people to take Mo Roofing away, and dismisses everyone. Only Elder Chang, Elder Ji, Star Wolf, and Ying Mei were left in the hole. Di Mingju's body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jun Shang, how are you? Han Yi says with a sobbing tone, without the protection of the Qianquan mirror, Ying Mei and I wouldn't have been able to return in one piece. Jun Shang used his own divine power to protect us. But the spatial tears that Jun Shang has suffered are clearly more serious than mine and Ning Mei's. Di Mingju coldly says, Ben Jun is fine, why are you panicking? Elder Chang glared at Elder Ji and roared, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you coming to treat Jun Shang? Old man Ji snapped out of his daze and stumbled over to the front. But Di Mingju waves his hand away, coldly saying, Ben Jun is well aware of my own body, I only need to go into seclusion to recuperate. Hearing Di Mingju say that he's fine, and seeing his calm and composed appearance, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. But at this time, Di Mingju's cold voice suddenly rings out, Mo Ruffing, how did you know that Ben Jun is in the Yanwu continent? How can he get close to the universe mirror? Hearing this, old man Ji's body suddenly trembled, and his face immediately turned ashen. It's been nearly a month since Di Mingju left. The competition of the Nether Flame Army finally came to an end. In the end, more than 1,000 Nether Flame Army elites obtained the Spirit Molding Pill. As for the other members of the Nether Flame Army, they received the Spiritual Cultivation Pill. At this time, in the Yanwu continent, no one knows that in the coming year the number of people who ascended to the Immortal Cultivation continent would increase exponentially. In the end, more than 3,000 people successfully molded their spiritual roots and followed Mayan's footsteps to the Shuzhen continent. Even those who stayed behind had their cultivations advance by leaps and bounds, becoming a tyrant of the Yanwu continent. Very soon, Jun Mayan and her Nether Flame Army will become a legend. In the Yanwu continent, it is a miracle that no one has ever done before, and no one will be able to surpass. Your injury is no longer a problem. Mu Yan withdraws her hand from Chang Yu's wrist and gently says, now that your Dantian has been activated, internal force can no longer be used. The Yanwu continent is no longer suitable for your survival. Chang Yu, I have already expelled the desolate qi from your body. It is time for you to return to the place that belongs to you. Chang Yu's body tensed up. His gaze unblinkingly falls on Mayan. Miss, I don't want to go. Mayan smiles faintly, you don't belong here. The barren air of the Yanwu continent will only corrode your spiritual root little by little. Furthermore, there will be a day when the Nether Flame Army and I will head to the Cultivation Continent. At that time, we will meet again. Now, many people in the Hellflame Valley had noticed Chang Yu's change and incompatibility. His appearance had almost no resemblance to before. That ordinary face had been replaced by a resolute face that seemed to have been carved out by a chisel. This was all because Chang Yu's previous cultivation, appearance, and memories had all been sealed. Now that his Dantian had been unsealed, Chang Yu's appearance had gradually recovered, and even his memories had returned bit by bit. Chang Yu remembered his sect, his family, and his hatred. Yes, he should go back to the cultivation world that belonged to him. Chapter 820. He couldn't bear to part with the Nether Flame Army, couldn't bear to part with his little master, couldn't bear to part with his brothers, and even more couldn't bear to part with this woman in front of him. Mu Yan's expression is calm. She looks at him calmly and slowly says, Chang Yu, you should understand that I can't give you any response, and I don't want you to have any false expectations. I don't like you. I don't like you. 5 words, resolute and decisive, leaving no room for negotiation. Chang Yu felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly slashed by a knife, dripping with blood. But the pain was so satisfying. He already knew that he didn't have any extravagant hopes, but at this moment, he finally lost all hope. Instead, he felt an indescribable sense of relief. Chang Yu laughed softly. He rarely laughed, and his expression was always indifferent and distant, as if he was incompatible with everything in the world. But when he smiled, he gave off a gentle feeling of peace and happiness. Miss, I've never had any wishful thinking. I just want to guard you, guard Little Master, and live like that with the Nether Flame Army. I know you won't like me, but you can't stop my feelings for you. Even I can't stop myself. I'm sorry, Mississippi. Can you please allow me to stay in the Nether Flame Army and stay by your and Little Master's side? Mu Yan is a little startled. Chang Yu's calm, sorrowful, and humble request made her heart uncomfortable. After a long while, she stood up and said with a smile, "What nonsense are you talking about? You've always been a member of the Nether Flame Army, one of the captains of the Ink Camp. You don't need anyone's permission to remain here, and no one has the right to expel you." After saying that, she didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Chang Yu stared blankly at her back as she left, then chuckled softly. This was great. He could still stay in the Nether Flame Army and protect her. This was really great. Chang Yu stretched out his hand and suddenly took out a flickering light blue flower from his bosom. He murmured, "Miss, happy birthday. Mayan's birthday has long passed." However, the Ajarasia flower that he had personally picked was a birthday gift that could never be given away. Mu Yan returned to her room and quickly entered the space. Xiao Bao had been in seclusion since 3 days ago. His current cultivation base was already at high-level Xiantian realm. If there were no accidents, he would be at the peak of the innate realm. Next, he would temper his body and soul and ascend to the cultivation continent. Although he doesn't know when Di Mingju will return, but if he can ascend to the Shuzhen continent. At the very least, she can be a little closer to Di Mingju, a little closer. Mu Yan gently caresses Xiao Bao's little face, then she looks at the fat rabbit that has already grown a lot of white fur. He casually tossed a few pills to it. The fat rabbit howled and pounced over, pulling the pill over and chewing on it like it was candy. Cho-Cho, who was watching from the side, was extremely envious. She also wanted to eat candy. However, Little Phoenix was only a spiritual body now and could only draw power from Little Bao. And he couldn't eat anything. Every time she saw the fat rabbit holding a large pile of delicious food and eating heartily, she would be so jealous that her face contorted. Mu Yan looks at the little guys for a while, and her expression suddenly changes. He quickly left the space. Just as she returned to her room, a black shadow silently descended from the sky. Mu Yan's pupils suddenly contract. Chapter 821. In the room, a powerful pressure filled the air. She only sensed the arrival of this person at the very last moment. Miss June. It was a masked man dressed in black. His voice was hoarse and coarse, filled with urgency. "My lord has been seriously injured. Please come with me to treat him." "What did you say?" Mayan's complexion greatly changes. Di Mingju was seriously injured. How did he get hurt? However, the black-clothed masked man did not say anything else. With a shake of his body, he disappeared on the spot. Mu Yan frowns. From this black-clothed man, she indeed felt the same aura as Ying Mei and the others. It was not the circulation of spiritual power, but the essence, qi, and spirit emitted from the body. It was as if they were born from the same land and the same qi of heaven and earth. This person should also be from the Shushan continent. Could it be that Di Mingju was really injured? As soon as she thinks of this possibility, Mayan's brain seems to explode with a loud bang, unable to think of anything else. She didn't even think about it as her figure swayed and she directly chased after the aura left behind by the black-robed man. 2 figures streaked across the Hellflame Valley like meteors. No one could see their movements, and no one noticed their departure. Only Chang Yu, who was standing quietly under the moonlight, seemed to sense something and abruptly raised his head. He frowned and muttered, "Miss. Was that Mrs. Aura just now?" After saying those words, Chang Yu hesitated for only an instant before quickly following after them. Mu Yan follows the black-clothed man all the way to the depths of the Wuwang Mountains. The deeper they go, the calmer Mayan's mind, which was originally unable to think because of anxiety, becomes. Is Di Mingju seriously injured? Although this man has the aura of the Shushan continent, is he really Di Mingju's subordinate? If Di Mingju was injured, why didn't he come to Hellflame Valley? Instead, they sent him into the dangerous Wuwang Mountains. Everything was so wrong. But Mu Yen still followed them. The newcomer's strength is high and his origins are unknown. The people of Yinwu continent are far from being able to contend with him. If they were to fight in the Nether Flame Valley, perhaps the other party would suffer from the backlash of the Heavenly Tao, but the Nether Flame army would also suffer heavy losses. This is what Mayan doesn't want to see. Moreover, she still held on to a glimmer of hope. What if Di Mingju is really injured? The moonlight shines like a chain. Tonight, the Wuwang Mountains are strangely quiet. All the mutated beasts seem to have sensed danger and hid in their caves, not even a shadow appeared. The black-robed man finally stopped in his tracks and knelt respectfully towards the void. Honorable Envoy, I've managed to accomplish my mission. I've already lured them over. You did very well. In the dark night, an arrogant female voice sounded. Mu Yen slowly raised her head and saw a masked woman dressed in white standing on a hill not far away. Those eyes are looking at Mu Yen with contempt and coldness. It was Leng Qingwan's personal maidservant, Furong. Behind Hibiscus, there were a few men dressed in the same clothes as the black-clothed man. Each and every one of them is staring at Mayan like a tiger watching its prey. With a wave of the masked woman's hand, these people immediately rush down the hill and surround Mayan. Furong's gaze then fell on the black-clothed man who lured Mayan here. She smiled and said, Elder Qi, as long as you can kill that bitch June Mayan today, I will report this to young master. You and the Evolution Moon sect will definitely benefit from it. Chapter 822. Hibiscus no longer pays attention to him, instead looking at Mayan. Her line of sight roams around her face, and a trace of deep jealousy floats up in her eyes. You're June Mayan. A mere lowly mortal, how could she have such an appearance? Did this slut use this foxy face to seduce the emperor? If she had this face, wouldn't Di Jun have a whole new level of respect for her? Mayan coldly looks at her. What is your relationship with Di Mingju? Why did you use him to trick me to come here? Impudent. Hibiscus flies into a rage. Di Jun's name isn't something that a lowly servant like you can casually call. Mayan rolls her eyes, and bluntly says, who do you think you are? Whether I call Di Mingju by name or not, what does it have to do with you? When Di Mingju didn't object, what qualifications do you have to babble about? Hearing that, Hibiscus's voice changes in anger. Lowly servant, death is at hand, yet you're still so shameless. Since that's the case, I'll let the four of you understand. My young master is Di Jun's fiancé. Recently, I learned that Di Jun was actually seduced by a lowly servant like you in this filthy place of the Yinwu continent. After my young master learned about it, she threw a big tantrum, wanting to break off the engagement with Di Jun. Di Jun naturally went back in person and coaxed our young master, letting her temper subside a bit. As for you, a lowly servant who shamelessly seduced someone else's fiancé, naturally, you couldn't stay. That's why the young master sent me down to clean you up. Hibiscus's words are like a heavy hammer, pounding on Mayan's heart, making her complexion turn deathly pale in a split second. It seems like it's also at this moment that she realizes she actually doesn't understand anything about Di Mingju. No matter where this person comes from, what kind of past and present he has, what does Di Jun of the polar domain mean, whether or not he's engaged, whether or not his parents agree to be together with him. She's completely clueless about all of this. Hibiscus looks at her face, and immediately reveals a carefree smile, unhurriedly saying, you should know, when young master issued me an order to get rid of you, lowly servant, Jun was by her side, comforting her. But the emperor didn't say a word. You, a mere lowly mortal, don't really think that you can become the mistress of the polar domain just by climbing onto the bed of the emperor monarch, right? You. What qualifications do you have to be compared to our young master? Our young lord and the arch-emperor are well matched in terms of social status, and their statuses are comparable. What about you? You can't even compare to an outer disciple who is in charge of sweeping. The more Hibiscus spoke, the more excited she became. But suddenly, a cold and indifferent female voice interrupted her. Are you done with your nonsense? Furong stares blankly, looking at Mayan in disbelief. Her face was still snow-white, but there was no trace of shame or sadness on her face. There was only coldness. Especially that pair of peach blossom eyes, it was like a bottomless cold pond. Just looking at it made people shiver. Furong was awed by the look in her eyes. She suddenly came back to her senses and was filled with disbelief. She was shocked by a mortal just now. How was this possible? What fiancé? Don't tell me that this fiancé was bestowed by your young master due to his own wishful thinking. Furong's complexion suddenly stiffens. Chapter 823. Mayan sneers. Turns out, it's just a rotten peach blossom of Demingju, that's all. She casually brushed her long hair, her every movement exuding an indescribable elegance and nobility. Hibiscus was clearly looking down at her from above, but she unexpectedly felt a sense of inferiority. Mayan carelessly looks at her, her smile full of ridicule. I know that my family's Demingju is outstanding, and there are always those women who think they're in love who want to throw themselves at him. It's just that he didn't expect that there's such a shameless woman in the Yanwu continent, but there's even one in the Shushan continent. How ugly and useless is your young master? He can't get married, so he has to stick to someone else's man. In the dark of the night, the Wuwang Mountains were deathly silent. Hibiscus and the surrounding black-clothed people all look terrified and aghast as they stare at Mayan. You slut, don't talk nonsense. Our young master is the Celestial Emperor's fiancé. Mu Yen sneers. Just because you say she's your fiancé, she's your fiancé. You asked Demingju, did he agree? If you have the guts, tell him to come out and admit to me that he already has a fiancé. Otherwise, if your young master isn't being overly sentimental and shameless, then what is it? Furong was so scared that she almost fainted. Because she knew that Ling Qingwan was currently in the Tianyi Men, using the Tianyi Men's most valuable treasure, the 1,000-mile mirror, to observe every movement here. The young master can clearly hear every word that Jun Mayan says. Hibiscus could not imagine at this time just how angry was the young master in front of the 1,000-mile mirror. In fact, these people might even suffer the wrath of the enraged young master and end up in a miserable state. Originally, Hibiscus had come here to atone for her crimes. But who in the Shushan continent would want to come to this Yanwu continent? In particular, if they stayed in this damned place for a long time, the desolate qi would slowly corrode their meridians and dantian. Once a spiritual body was eroded by the desolate qi, it would take at least a few decades to recover. Furong's cultivation in Tianyi Men wasn't high in the first place. Going back this time would result in even more disastrous losses, but she had no choice but to come. Otherwise, her future would be completely ruined. And all of this is caused by this lowly servant before him, Jun Mayan. An intense killing intent burst out from Hibiscus's eyes as she gnashed her teeth and said, "Lowly maid, you're just taking advantage of this moment to show off your eloquence. In a moment, I want you to kneel at my feet and weep and repent for what you just said." Mayan raises her hand and the Tian Mo Chin appears in it. The sound of the zither rang out, and the wind whistled. In an instant, Hibiscus and the black-clothed man's expressions changed. Hibiscus's eyes suddenly light up with a scorching light, her gaze practically glued to the Tian Mo Chin. This is the sacred object of the kamikaze school, the most precious treasure of heaven and earth, the Tian Mo Chin. Hibiscus's voice trembled. She leaned forward slightly as if she was itching to pounce on him. Give it to me, Jun Mayan, immediately give me the zither in your hand. I might be able to leave your corpse intact. Mayan's fingers moved lightly, and the sound of the zither spun and finally floated in the air. Even Mayan's figure seems like it could fly away at any time. Her sharp and languid gaze falls on Hibiscus and the black-clothed man, her fingertips lightly plucking the strings. If you want the Tian Mo Chin, then come and snatch it yourself if you have the ability. Shushan Continent, Tian Men. Boom! The tables and chairs in the main hall burst into pieces under the powerful pressure. Chapter 824. Slut! 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 How dare you humiliate me, Ling Qingwan? She is the dignified young master of Tian Men, a goddess that many immortals yearn for, an existence that many people envy. And Jun Mayan. She's just a mortal from the lowliest world, an ant-like existence. What qualifications does she have to laugh at her? What qualifications does she have to mock her? Young master, please calm down. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu kneel behind Ling Qingwan, saying repeatedly that Jun Mayan is nothing more than a mortal who hasn't ascended. Even if Hibiscus is no good, she can certainly cripple her. At that time, how you want to deal with that slut, isn't it up to you, young master? That's right, young master. You have a precious body, why bother with that kind of lowly servant? It wouldn't bring disgrace to your status. Ling Qingwan takes a deep breath, her eyes once again focusing on the Qianli mirror. Just then, the girl in the mirror flips her wrist, and a zither appears, the sound of the zither clanging. Seeing the Tian Mo Chin in Mayan's hands, Ling Qingwan's pupils suddenly contract. She almost blurts out, Tian Mo Chin. Behind her, Ling Lan and Lu Zhu also look excited. Young master, the Tian Mo Chin, the most precious Tian Mo Chin of the Shen music sect, is still here. Back then, the Shen musicians could make the three realms tremble with fear. Apart from the crafty and insidious skills of the Shen musicians, it was also because of this Tian Mo Chin that could move unhindered under the heavens. No one could match it. If my Tian men could obtain this Tian Mo Chin, and with the skills of the Shen musicians, young master, in the future, Ling Qingwan's gaze is frighteningly hot. Even the anger, shame, and jealousy from just now turn into a strong greed for the Tian Mo Chin and the skills of the Shen musicians at this moment. With all of this, she can not only dominate the world like the Shen musicians in those days. She can also make the emperor look at her in a new light, and even take the initiative to beg her. Her slender fingers, smeared with blood-red cardamom, press on the Qianli mirror, and quickly draw a rune. That's an order to Hibiscus, kill Jun Mayan at all costs, seize the Tian Mo Chin and the Shen musicians' inheritance. Even if Ling Qingwan didn't give this order, Farong would still be itching to dismember Mayan's body into 1,000 pieces at this moment, and then take that ancient treasure, the Tian Mo Chin. In Furong's mind, even if Jun Mayan's talent and cultivation are pretty good, she's still just a mortal in the end. These black-clothed men were the elites of the Evolution Moon sect. Everyone's cultivation had long surpassed the level of Anidia. That's right, people from the upper realms have 90% of their strength suppressed in the Yinwu continent. He couldn't use his spiritual power without restraint, nor could he cast powerful spells. They might even suffer a backlash from the erosion of the barren qi. However, spirit cultivators were spirit cultivators after all. They were fundamentally different from mortals. Not to mention anything else, just the aura released by a spirit cultivator was enough to cause the entire world to tremble. To the mortals of the Yinwu continent, it would pose a fatal threat. After Farong gave the order, Elder Qi, who was the leader of the group, didn't make a move. Instead, he directed the disciples to attack. However, Junmai's strength far exceeded his expectations. A figure flew out and crashed into a rock. His face turned pale, and he spurted a mouthful of blood. Elder Chi glanced at him, and his brows furrowed. That person was his favorite disciple, and his cultivation was already at the 8th level of Anidia. But unexpectedly, he couldn't withstand 3 moves from Junmai. Chapter 825. Elder Chi takes a deep look at Mayan, and says in a deep voice, "I really underestimated you. That being the case, let me see for myself how powerful the Shin musician's successor is." Almost as soon as Elder Chi's voice falls, Mayan's expression suddenly congeals. The zither in her hand spins, emitting 7 colored rays of light. 7 Sword Spirit activates. At the same time, Elder Chi's attack arrives. In the Yenwu continent, most of the weapons in the Shojin world are unusable. That's because there's no 5-star spiritual energy between heaven and earth here, only a thick aura of desolation. But Elder Chi is holding a bronze-yellow circular object in his hand, and he doesn't know what it is. As he soars into the air, the spiritual energy within his body is operating. That circular object suddenly expands, and it quickly soars into the air. The next moment, countless icicles fall down like a rainstorm. There's a crackling sound, accompanied by a burst of dust and grass flying. But immediately, these dust and grass are frozen in the air. The temperature within a 100-meter radius dropped to freezing point in an instant. Even the 7 swords surrounding Mayan seem to be frozen by this frost, their light dimming little by little. But the disciples of the derived moon sect aren't affected by this frost in the slightest. The long sword in their hands whistles, spiritual energy frantically operating. The pace under their feet seems to have suddenly sped up dozens of times. In a flash, they've already rushed in front of Mayan, who is frozen and unable to move. Swish, 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 swish. Countless sharp swords containing spiritual energy stab towards Mayan. Hibiscus stands high on the hill, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a cruel and disdainful smile. Compared to the trash of the Yenwu continent, Junmai's talent and cultivation may indeed be considered pretty good. But to fight against the Tiani men and the young master, that's a real joke. Just the attacks of a few small fries of the derived moon sect can already pierce her heart with 1,000 arrows, dying without a burial ground. But the next moment, Hibiscus hears the cries of alarm of the derived moon sect's disciples. Ah! My spiritual energy! Why is my spiritual energy frantically disappearing? What did you do to us? All the derived moon sect's disciples surrounding Mayan and attacking her have frightened expressions. Their faces, which were originally filled with complacency and excitement, turned deathly pale. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Even the frost released by Elder Chi, which originally had no effect on them, was crawling up their bodies bit by bit. Elder Chi's expression changed drastically. He waved his hand, wanting to pull his disciple back. His spiritual aura was powerful, and in a split second, 3 disciples were swept back by him. But the remaining dozen or so people seemed to stick around Mu Yen. His expression grew more and more terrified, and his body trembled more and more. A moment later, wounds began to appear on those people's bodies. And these scars were exactly the same as the shape of the swords they attacked. At the same time, accompanied by the intermittent sound of the zither, a silver-white light shines brighter and brighter on Mayan's body. Shocked and furious, Elder Chi was about to leap up. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The dozen or so disciples flew out and fell heavily to the ground. His body twitched, and his eyes rolled back into his head. He was no longer able to get up. As the white light dissipates, Mayan's figure appears. Chapter 826. Her face was paler than rice paper, and her body was so weak that it seemed like she could collapse at any time. However, a cold smile slowly appeared on her beautiful face. After Divine Hand weaves the heavens leveled up, it's truly frightening. After Mu Yan's musician skills reached the 3rd level, many of her skills have also been upgraded. This included Divine Hands, which could only form a protective barrier. The current Divine Hands could not only form a protective barrier, but they could also reflect and absorb enemy attacks. However, if the enemy's cultivation was stronger than hers, she would definitely be able to defeat them. Mu Yan will bear the overflowing damage. Therefore, Mu Yan had killed more than half of the people from the derived moon sect with this strike. But in reality, she had also paid a high price for it. Elder Chi's eyes are lifeless. He didn't think that killing a mortal of the Yinwu continent, a task that he thought he could easily complete, would be a task. He had actually lost so many of his elites. He suddenly glares at Mayan, his eyes almost spitting fire. How dare you kill my sect's people? Bitch, I'll take your life right now. Elder Chi suddenly soared into the sky. The strange weapon in his hand seemed to be summoned by him as it suddenly grew bigger. But this time, it wasn't an icicle that fell. Instead, it was a raging fire. Along with the raging flames, Elder Chi's attack was also like the pressure of Mount Tai. Mu Yan only feels as if the ground under her feet has turned into blazing lava. The soles of his shoes were burned through, and the soles of his bare feet were scarred. But she didn't even have time to care about the injury on her foot. Elder Chi's attack was like a torrential storm, accompanied by scorching flames, not giving her a chance to breathe. In the face of absolute power. No matter how many techniques there were, they were just fancy decorations. The scars on Mayan's body increase one by one, and the spiritual energy and internal force within her body dry up little by little. On the other hand, Elder Chi's attacks were like a never-ending storm. At any time, this lonely boat of hers would be smashed into pieces. Hibiscus finally felt at ease when she saw this scene. This time, Jun Mayan is bound to die. Elder Chi, who was attacking crazily, had the same thought. However, a cup of tea had passed. A quarter of an hour passed. Half an hour had passed. Elder Chi's attacks are still like a violent storm. Mu Yan's figure is still dyed red with blood, on the verge of collapse. But, she actually didn't fall. Elder Chi's face was filled with fear. What was going on? What the hell was going on? This woman's blood should have been drained long ago, and her spiritual power should have been used up long ago. But why hadn't she collapsed? Elder Chi could already feel that the spiritual energy in his body was getting lesser and lesser, gradually drying up. However, the young girl who he thought would soon collapse and become a fish on his chopping block was still stubbornly standing. He didn't believe it. He doesn't believe that he, a dignified elder of the derived moon sect, can't even kill a mortal of the Yinwu continent. An angry roar. Elder Chi gathered the remaining spiritual energy in his body, and the magic weapon in the air suddenly returned to him. It turned into a long spear and shot towards Mu Yan's chest. Demon woman, go to hell. However, there was no sound of a sharp blade piercing through flesh, and the scene of blood splattering did not appear again. Elder Chi felt the spear in his hand being obstructed by a force, unable to move forward. Chapter 8:27. The girl's voice is hoarse and weak, but it carelessly and softly rings in his ear. All right, I've let you show off for so long. Now, it should be my turn, right? Elder Chi's eyes suddenly widen, a little bit of fear emerging in the depths of his eyes. This woman, what is she saying? Such a thought just flashes through his mind. Elder Chi feels a seven-colored light flickering in front of him, merging into one. He can't even clearly see what it is, but he feels a tearing pain in his chest. Elder Chi instinctively wants to use spiritual power to resist the attack, but in the next moment, fear emerges in his eyes. His dantian is completely empty, without a trace of spiritual power remaining. And in the Yenwu continent, it's impossible to absorb even a trace of spiritual power from the air. No, this isn't. A hoarse voice comes out of Elder Chi's mouth, but it's immediately drowned out by a large amount of blood. Elder Chi's mouth keeps spilling blood. He slowly lowers his head, only to see his empty chest. His heart, bang. His tall and sturdy figure falls down, smashing into a cloud of dust. Elder Chi is dead. Hibiscus simply can't believe her eyes. Even the veil on her face has long been torn off, revealing a malevolent and horrified expression. This June Mayan, she actually killed Elder Chi. One must know that even though Elder Chi is only a person from the Shuzhen continent, his true strength is no less than hers. Hibiscus's body can't help but tremble. But very soon, she sees that June Mayan, who killed Elder Chi, is swaying, unable to support herself any longer, and falls down. Hibiscus cautiously approaches Mayan. After confirming that there isn't a trace of spiritual power left in her body, that her body is riddled with scars, and that she's on the verge of death, Hibiscus shows a carefree smile. That's right. Even if this June Mayan is more powerful, even if she could really kill Elder Chi. But how could she not pay a little price? Hibiscus looks down at Mayan from above, and even gives her a ruthless kick. June Mayan, if you want to die happily, then immediately hand over the Shin musician inheritance. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Mayan's eyes droop, her breathing almost non-existent, as if she's already dead. Hibiscus snorted coldly and was filled with disdain. Her eyes turn and fall on the Tian Mo Chin. The zither looked old and plain, without any luster. However, Hibiscus's eyes lit up, her eyes filled with greed and excitement. This is the ancient treasure that makes everyone go crazy, Tian Mo Chin ah. Hibiscus's hand slowly reaches for the Tian Mo Chin, then she holds it in her arms. The Tian Mo Chin doesn't react at all, but it remembers the formidable strength that Mayan had just displayed when she used it. Hibiscus's heartbeat quickened uncontrollably. June Mayan is just a lowly mortal. With the Tian Mo Chin and the Shin musician inheritance, she can become so powerful. What if she obtains the Tian Mo Chin and the Shin musician inheritance? Would she become even more powerful than the young lord? Would she also gain the favor of the celestial emperor? Hibiscus's eyes were filled with intoxication and greed. She doesn't even notice that the strings of the Tian Mo Chin that she's holding in her arms aren't being strummed, but they're gently undulating. The lingering sound of the zither rang in her ears, as if it was weeping and complaining. Chapter 828. He murmurs, Tian Men, Ling Qingwan is nothing. As long as I become the successor of the Shin musicians, I can also obtain the emperor's love. I can also obtain everything, ha. Farong laughed wildly. He simply doesn't notice that the Tian Mo Chin in his hand is flashing with a 7-colored radiance. Immediately, it transformed into a translucent long sword and pierced through Hibiscus's body. Ah! Hibiscus let out a blood-curdling scream. The 7 absolute sword flies back to Mu Yan, turns back into the Tian Mo Chin, and then disappears into Mu Yan's body. She staggered to her feet. This time, it was her turn to look down at Farong. Didn't anyone teach you not to touch other people's things? If he moved, he would have to pay a heavy price. A bloody hole appeared in Hibiscus's chest. Just like Elder Chi, there was nothing there. His heart had exploded. She unwaveringly glares at Mu Yan, her voice hoarse and broken. How could it be? You're just a mortal. How could it be? the last breath was stuck in her throat and Hibiscus completely stopped breathing. Mu Yan let out a long sigh. All the pain and powerlessness in her body surged up in an instant. She had used up almost all of her energy in this battle. If it weren't for the restrictions of the Yanwu continent, it could be said that she has no chance of winning against these people who are far more powerful than her. But no matter what, she had won now. Mu Yan takes out the elixir and puts it in her mouth. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. In the night sky of the Wuwang Mountains, a strong wind suddenly blew. Mayan raises her head and sees that the originally pitch-black horizon has been dug out by someone at some unknown time. The whirlpool in the cave surged as if it was connected to another world. Then, 3 figures flashed out of the cave. The leader of the group was a masked woman whose entire body was snow white. His entire body exuded an arrogant and cold temperament. Behind her stood 2 maidservants, one dressed in blue and the other in green. Useless thing, you can't even deal with a lowly bitch, and even the young master has to personally take action. Ling Lan glanced at Furong's corpse in disgust. And she even dared to draw a portrait of the monarch. She died just like that. She really got off lightly. Ling Qingwan's gaze falls on Mayan. He was aloof, cold, and disdainful, and he seemed like he was looking at an ant that he could crush at any moment. Jun Mayan, do you think that if you can climb onto God Monarch's bed, you will definitely be able to soar into the sky and be blessed with glory? Mayan raises her eyes to look at Ling Qingwan. She couldn't even stand steadily and could faint at any time. However, there was no trace of fear on her face. Instead, the corners of her mouth curled up to reveal a mocking smile. So, you're that self-delusional fiancé. Ling Qingwan's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent, but soon after, it turned into a condescending pity. Death is near at hand, but your courage is not small. No wonder you would shamelessly seduce Monarch. However, you're still a bastard. In my eyes, your life is worth less than an ant's. If I want to kill you now, it might be easier than killing an ant. You should be very clear about this. Ling Qingwan chuckled, but don't worry, I won't kill you yet. In reality, the moon's spiritual root in your body is rarely seen in this world. Furthermore, you are born with such a foxy and seductive nature. If I were to give you to some influential person who likes to cultivate in demonic arts, I believe it would not be a bad idea. Chapter 829. At that time, Di Jun and I will live together, a loving husband and wife, and you can only moan under a different man. Ling Qingwan's voice is faint and cold, as if she's just casually narrating. But in fact, her words contain a powerful soul-sucking power. She saw Jun Mayan kill Furong and the elder of the Flowing Moon sect with her own eyes in the Qianli mirror. Ling Qingwan's hatred towards Jun Mayan grows, but she also longs for the Shin musician inheritance and the Tian Mo Qin. She firmly believes that Jun Mayan, as a lowly mortal, has such strength, and it must be due to the Shin musician inheritance. Di Jun falling in love with her must also be because of the Shin musician inheritance. What if she was the one who obtained this inheritance? Ling Qingwan's heart is full of fiery desire. So much so that she suppresses the desire to kill Mayan immediately. Instead, she hopes to provoke her with words, and control her with the soul-sucking spell when her mind is agitated and angry. Let her become his slave puppet. At that time, the Shin musician inheritance and the Tian Mo Qin will be hers, and Jun Mayan will be at her mercy. Sure enough, under the attack of her words and mental power, Mayan's complexion becomes increasingly pale, her body is on the verge of collapse, and the light in her eyes is gradually replaced by confusion. Ling Qingwan's mouth hooks up into a cold smile. Just as she is about to continue, the corners of Mayan's mouth suddenly hooks up into a lazy curve. The careless voice softly speaks with ridicule. Now, I really have some sympathy for Di Mingju, to be fancied by such a self-delusional and crazy woman like you. You said that you and Di Mingju will be a loving husband and wife, and live together, and you're embarrassed. Did Di Mingju agree? Seeing your artificial face, won't he feel disgusted, and still be in love with you? Mayan slowly raises her head. The dazed and painful expression on her face has long disappeared without a trace. Her complexion is still pale, and her body is still weak, as if it could collapse at any time. But the smile on her mouth is lazy and noble, as if the one being despised as an ant isn't her, but Ling Qingwan. And these words of hers ruthlessly stab Ling Qingwan's heart. The scene of Di Mingju being cold and disgusted towards her, but caring and gentle towards June Mayan flashes before her eyes. Her face twisted as she gnashed her teeth and said, "Bitch, how dare you humiliate me?" Mayan sneers, her fingers lightly plucking the strings of the zither. A person will humiliate himself, and you will be humiliated by others. Since you've brought about your own humiliation, I will naturally help you. Oh, right, there's something else I forgot to tell you. Didn't you ask if Di Mingju would still want me if I was tainted and unclean? I'm really sorry, I had a child 5 years ago, but Di Mingju said that he didn't care. This fairy is really noble and elegant, pure as ice and jade. It's just a pity that my family's Di Mingju doesn't fancy you, and disdains you for being disgusting. What should we do then? Ling Qingwan could only feel the annoying sound of the zither ringing in her mind. And Mayan's words are like needles, stabbing into her heart. Her mind was like thunder echoing over and over again. June Mayan, that slut, once had a child, but Di Jun didn't care and still wanted her. As for himself, she was infatuated with the emperor, and her status was 100 times higher than this slut's, but the emperor only felt disgust and hatred towards her. Why? In what way is she inferior to this slut? Finally, Zhang. The sound of the zither resounds. Chapter 830. Young Mistress. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo cried out in alarm, hurriedly supporting her. Ling Qingwan heaved a sigh of relief. She sensed that she had consumed more than half of her spiritual power, as well as her severely injured primordial spirit. He roared, "Kill her! Kill this bitch! She wants Mayan to die. Even if he doesn't want the Shin musician inheritance, he must let this slut die without a burial ground. She hates June Mayan for getting Di Mingju's affection that she could only yearn for even in her dreams. But what makes her crazily jealous and hateful is that she had just gathered all of her mental power to attack Mayan. She thought that it was a sure win, but she didn't expect that not only was June Mayan not affected in the slightest, she was instead killed by June Mayan. What did this mean? Could it be that this slut's psychic power was stronger than hers? How could Ling Qingwan accept such an outcome? Ling Lan and Lu Zhu receive the order and simultaneously soar up. The long swords in their hands carry a formidable pressure as they stab straight towards Mayan. After Mayan's zither counterattacked Ling Qingwan, the last bit of strength in her body was also drained away. She stood there quietly, looking at the long sword that was about to take her life. His eyes were calm, but there was a hint of reluctance in them. 7 brilliants, she said softly in her heart. I'll dissolve the contract with you right now and set you free. Don't forget what you promised me. Protect Xiao Bao for me. 7 brilliants was silent for a moment before he slowly said, if you take the initiative to terminate the contract with me, your soul will scatter and you will never be able to reincarnate. But as long as you refine my primordial spirit, the Tian Mo Qin's power will completely erupt. These scum would all die. Are you sure you won't consider it? Mayan hooks up the corners of her lips, revealing a gentle and affectionate smile. Qi Huang, you always talk so much nonsense. Erupting the Tian Mo Qin's full power might be able to kill the person in front of him. However, Seven Brilliance would once again fall into a deep slumber, his mind and soul injured. The most important thing is that the Yenwu continent will be annihilated. She couldn't even bear to injure the people of the Nether Flame Army in the Battle of Hellflame Valley. How could she bear to let the Yenwu continent and the people she cares about on this main road be annihilated? Mu Yen suddenly closes her eyes, clenches her hands into fists, and slowly loosens them. 2 totem marks slowly appeared on her palms. I, Jun Mayan, today use my soul as a sacrifice, my life as a vow, to dissolve the Tian Mo Qin. In the space of the Tian Mo Qin, the red-clothed youngster stands alone in the green field. A pair of bottomless phoenix eyes stared unblinkingly at the young girl outside. A cold and resolute vow was spat out from his thin lips. As long as the oath is made, he can cancel the master-servant contract with Mayan without paying any price. Qi Huang was never willing to become a servant of filthy humans. However, as an artifact spirit, it had no other choice. At this moment, he was finally going to regain his freedom. However, as Qi Huang stared blankly at the lonely figure in the dark night, he didn't feel the slightest bit carefree. A vague image flashed through his mind and then disappeared without a trace. Seven Brilliance stretched out his hand, his eyes blurred as if he wanted to stop something. Just then, before Mu Yen could finish chanting the incantation, Green Bamboo and Ling Lan's attacks had already arrived. The long sword descends from the sky, aiming straight for the top of Mayan's skull. Seven Brilliance didn't even think about it and struck out with his palm. In an instant, the incantation to dissolve the contract was interrupted. Green Bamboo and Ling Lan's swords were also swept to the side. Chapter 831. Mayan stares blankly, looking down at her palm where the light has disappeared. Anger finally appears on her calm face. Qi Huang, what are you doing? Didn't we agree on the conditions? Can't this sage go back on his word? In the space, Qi Huang sits down on the lawn and disdainfully says, this sage doesn't want to cancel the contract with you. This sage intends to die with you and your son. The blue veins on Mayan's forehead throb, almost wanting to curse out loud. This son of a bitch, who wants to die with him. How could she allow her baby to die? But it's all too late. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu make a comeback. The wind whistles, and the 2 swords burst into blazing flames. Mayan closes her eyes in despair, cursing Qi Huang, that willful bastard, 1,000 times in her heart. Her divine sense sinks into the space, and what she sees is Xiao Bao's adorable appearance as he sits cross-legged with his eyes closed. How she wants to see her baby grow up, how she wants to accompany him to old age. But she didn't expect that even if she's reborn, they would only have a short 5-year mother-son bond. Mayan's spiritual tentacles gently caress Xiao Bao's white and tender cheeks, then resolutely and thoroughly seals the space. Her death will cause the space to collapse, but the Tian Mo Qin won't disappear. Perhaps, her baby still has a chance of survival. The moment Mayan seals the space, Xiao Bao suddenly opens his eyes and murmurs, Nyangqin. Just as Mayan's divine sense leaves the space, the swords have already whistled in front of her. Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's cultivation is far higher than Elder Qi and Furong's. Even in her heyday, Mayan doesn't think that she can deal with them. What's more, at this time, she doesn't have the slightest bit of spiritual power and internal force in her body. Mayan slowly closes her eyes, waiting for death to come. However, the expected pain of being burned and pierced by the flames doesn't come. Instead, Mayan feels a warm energy envelop her. She opens her eyes and sees a tall figure blocking in front of her. That figure has been pierced by Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's swords. The flames burn on his wounds, making a sizzling sound as his flesh is scorched and his blood is evaporating. However, he didn't even flinch as he firmly protected her behind him. Mayin's pupils suddenly contract, her chapped lips slightly open, and her hoarse voice seems to break. Chang. You. Her voice caused the body in front of her to sway and slowly fall down. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo withdrew their swords and curled their lips in disdain. He's actually a spirit cultivator. Judging from the fluctuation of his spiritual power, he should be related to the Raging Flames sect. Oh, I didn't expect this bitch to be able to seduce so many men. They are so infatuated with her that they don't even want their lives. So what if she's capable? She's going to die anyway. Everything she has now will belong to our young master from now on. Mu Yan stares blankly at Chang Yu, who is lying in front of her. Her eyes seem to be dyed red by the blazing flames. With her psychic power, she could clearly sense that Chang Yu was losing his life force bit by bit. She wants to play the Tian Mo Qin, she wants to use the Saint of Benevolence to save his life. But now, there was not even a little bit of spiritual power in her body. She could only watch helplessly as Chang Yu walked towards his death, powerless to do anything. Why? Why did he have to risk his life to delay her survival for a moment? Chapter 832. Why is it that he knows that she won't respond, yet he's willing to do anything? Miss. Chang Yu grabs her hand with difficulty. His usually indifferent face shows a shallow and gentle smile. I don't care what my past is. I only know that from the moment you took me away from Wan Ren-ku as Chang Yu, you are my everything. I am willing to give everything to protect you even for a moment. Before he could finish his words, Mu Yan feels a sudden surge of spiritual power madly pouring into the hand that's holding her. Mu Yan's eyes suddenly widen. Chang Yu. She desperately wants to shake off Chang Yu's hand, but Chang Yu's grip is very, very tight. Gurgling, turbulent spiritual power flows into her body. At the same time, Chang Yu's cultivation and innate spiritual roots also flow in. Little by little, her dried-up dantian is filled with external spiritual power. Although it's accompanied by the pain of her meridians being torn apart, the majestic power also returns at the same time. There's also the cultivation that Mu Yan has been suppressing, not letting it break through the zero boundary point. At this moment, it's like an erupting volcano, no longer able to be suppressed. Chang Yu looks at the girl's slowly rosy complexion in front of him, her body brimming with power. A satisfied and gentle smile appears on his face. On the contrary, his own appearance gradually becomes old and thin. Until, his appearance is haggard. The hand holding Mu Yan finally weakly hangs down. Mu Yan's body trembles, and her eyes redden. But she doesn't waste any time, and quickly takes out the Tian Mo Qin to play. Chang Yu's vitality has already dried up. But even if there's only a glimmer of hope, she will never give up. However, a withered hand presses on the strings, preventing her from moving. Chang Yu's old and hoarse voice slowly speaks, "Miss, don't waste your energy." Mu Yan bites her lip, and angrily says, "Shut up." She pushes Chang Yu's hand away, wanting to play the Tian Mo Qin. But Chang Yu says softly, "Miss, towards you. I never had any improper thoughts, but I'm going to die now. You, cough cough, can you allow me to die in your arms?" His muddy and aged eyes try to fall on Mu Yan's beautiful face, but his vision is so blurry. The last trace of spiritual power in his body dissipates, taking away his only chance of survival. Mayan closes her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. She reached out and lifted Chang Yu up, placing him on her lap. He was supposed to be a sturdy man, but at this moment, he was as light as a piece of dry firewood that could dry up and break at any time. Mayan clenches her teeth and whispers, "Chang Yu, tell me, what other wishes do you have? I will fulfill them for you." Chang Yu chuckled softly. He raised his right hand with great difficulty and slowly fumbled around in his clothes. In the next moment, a beautiful flower with a faint red glow appeared in his hand. That was the everlasting youth flower. Changyu raises his head, looking for Mu Yan's face. He could no longer see anything in front of him, but the girl's bright and beautiful face was clearly imprinted in his mind. In the turbid and evil world, hell was boundless. The young girl, whose clothes were as white as snow and whose slender fingers plucked the strings of the zither, was like a ray of light that illuminated his chaotic and dark life. From then on, he sank into obsession and was consigned to eternal damnation, but he was willing to endure it. Chapter 833. Miss, happy birthday. Her 5 fingers gently loosen, and the everlasting youth flower falls into Mayan's palm. Changyu's hands drooped down, his eyes slightly closed, a serene and satisfied smile on his face. Sure enough, she's a remnant of the Shen musicians. She only knows how to seduce others, but she can actually make this stupid man disobey her and die. Heh, you think you can fight against the 2 of us just because you've recovered some of your spiritual power? What a joke. Ling Lan and Green Bamboo looked disdainfully at Changyu, who had stopped breathing, and raised their swords. Just now, when Changyu transferred his spiritual power and cultivation to Mayan, they naturally saw it. But so what if he had spiritual power? He was just a piece of trash at the body-forging stage, while they were high and mighty immortals. Bitch, I want to see who will come and save you this time. Ling Lan's long sword flickered with blazing flames, stabbing straight at Mayan. Clang! The sword was blocked halfway. It was accompanied by the hum of the zither. Boundless energy surged out along with the sound of the zither. A strong wind blew as if it wanted to overturn the world. However, there was no fear on Ling Lan and Green Bamboo's faces. In the face of an absolute gap in strength, no matter what kind of technique or amazing talent, it was just a joke. They were not trash like Hibiscus, nor were they normal spirit cultivators like Elder Qi. They were the elite selected from the dignified Tianyi men and the trusted aides of the Tianyi men's young master. Killing Jun Mayan is as easy as turning one's hand. Ling Lan withdrew her long sword and slashed it across the ground. A deep ravine appeared with a rumbling sound. The entire Wuang Mountains were shaking. Green Bamboo soars into the air, the long sword in her hand quickly waving, interweaving into a sword net that is as dense as the stars, completely enveloping Mu Yan. As the net of swords falls, Mayan's body will be dismembered into 1,000 pieces. Rumble. Suddenly, a clap of thunder came from the sky. The lightning struck down from above, right beside Green Bamboo. Green Bamboo originally did not take the thunder tribulation seriously, but suddenly felt a huge energy sweeping over. She cried out in pain as her entire body was flung away, crashing heavily onto the ground. The thunder grew louder and denser. The starless and moonless night sky also began to change. The huge silver moon was hanging high in the eastern sky. 9 stars of different colors surrounded the silver moon, rotating bit by bit, the stars and the moon intertwined. But what was even more strange was that more and more thunderclouds began to gather around the moon and stars. However, these lightning clouds weren't grayish-black, nor were they ice-blue like the ones Little Treasure had experienced during his tribulation. Instead, it was sparkling and translucent like water. In just a blink of an eye, the Yinwu continent that was originally shrouded in silence and darkness is thoroughly illuminated. Heaven and earth shook. Ling Qingwan suddenly raised her head and looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky. Her expression changed greatly. 9 stars and the moon, the night is as dark as day. This is God-slaying tribulation. It's the God-slaying tribulation. Kill her, hurry up and kill her. We can't let her cross the tribulation. Ling Qingwan's voice suddenly rose, almost breaking. His arrogant and cold face finally revealed a terrified expression. She wanted to immediately teleport away and return her primordial spirit to the immortal cultivation continent. However, the thunderclouds in the sky seemed to have completely locked down this area. No one could escape. Chapter 834. So far, even in the entire Shushan continent, there are no more than 10 people who have survived the God-slaying tribulation. Every time the God-slaying tribulation fails, it will bring about a calamity of misery and suffering. Ling Qingwan is shocked and angry, her body can't help but tremble. Jun Mayan, this slut is just a mortal with a mere body forging stage cultivation. How could she possibly cross the God-slaying tribulation? Naturally, she can't succeed. But once she fails, all the holy spirits in the Wuwang Mountains, including Ling Qingwan and the other two, will be buried with her. Even though it's only her primordial spirit avatar here. But once it's destroyed, Ling Qingwan's cultivation will directly lose half. How can she accept this? Now, the only way is to kill Jun Mayan before she attracts more of the God-slaying tribulation. Ling Qingwan's eyes are full of murderous intent. She suddenly soars into the sky, releasing a terrifying pressure. At this moment, she can no longer maintain her high and mighty elegance. She just wants to quickly kill this slut, Jun Mayan, and protect her own cultivation and life. Hearing this, Ling Lan and Lu Zhu are even more frightened. Ling Qingwan came to the Yanwu continent with her primordial spirit avatar, but they are the real body. If they are destroyed by the God-slaying tribulation, not only will they die, they will never be able to rise again. Thunderclouds roll over and over in the sky, reflecting colorful light. Thunder falls one after another, and each one can directly annihilate a mountain peak in the Wuwang Mountains. In the mountains, the mournful screams of strange beasts echo everywhere as they flee in fear. However, this mountain range seemed to have been cut off from the rest of the world and had become a cage where only death awaited. As Mayan's cultivation breaks through the bottleneck of the peak pre-celestial realm, the lightning tribulation will fall more and more frequently, until everything shrouded by the thunder clouds is destroyed. Under the moonlight, the girl in white is bathed in blood, but she stands proudly. She holds a small flower that emits a light blue light in her hand. After staring at it for a while, she carefully puts the flower in her bosom. Mayan raises her head. Her ears are filled with Ling Qingwan's angry shouts, Ling Lan and Lu Zhu's frightened and resentful shouts. Her mouth curls up into a cold and mocking smile. Don't you think of me as an ant and trash? Now, all of you are going to be buried with me, an ant. How do you feel? Jun Mayan, you're crazy. Ling Qingwan bellows, I order you to stop your advancement immediately, do you hear me? There's no way you can withstand the God-slaying tribulation. Do you want to die? Mu Yan raised her head to look at the sky. The terrifying power coming from the crystal-clear thunderclouds made her feel as if her soul was trembling in fear. Of course, she knew that she could not survive the God-slaying tribulation. As a matter of fact, she had no idea what a God-slaying tribulation was. However, the moment Chang Yu closed his eyes, a crazy killing intent surged in her chest. There was only one thought in her mind. She needed powerful strength. She wanted to kill this group of dregs and make everyone here accompany Chang Yu in death. After that, her cultivation finally broke through the critical point. Powerful energy burst forth from his body. What followed was God-slaying calamity. Chapter 835. As soon as her voice falls, the spiritual power within Mu Yan's body suddenly erupts. The Tian Mo Qin in his hand flashes, instantly transforming into 7 long swords. 7 sword spirits, activated. The attacks of Ling Lan, Green Bamboo, and Ling Qingwan instantly fell on the 7 sword spirit. Mu Yan fiercely spits out a mouthful of blood, her frail body on the verge of collapse. But at the same time, the thunderclouds in the sky became thicker and thicker, and the tribulation lightning fell faster and faster. Ah! Finally, Ling Lan was struck by a bolt of tribulation lightning. He let out a blood-curdling screech. In an instant, not even a trace of his flesh could be seen before he was turned into ashes. Green Bamboo stared blankly at this scene, her face pale. The fear and despair brought by the shadow of death slowly surfaced in her eyes. No, no. I don't want to die. I don't want to die here. Jun Mayan, stop, quickly stop. Green Bamboo's hair was disheveled, and even the sword in her hand was lost somewhere. Her face was ferocious like an evil spirit. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she pounced towards Mu Yan. Bitch, go die. How can I, a dignified immortal, die in this damned place? Ah! Mu Yan looks at her fiendish appearance as she pounces over, and only smiles coldly. He moved back a few meters. Blinding lightning flashed and thunder roared. A bolt of rainbow-colored lightning struck the spot where she had just been standing. Green Bamboo was just about to pounce on him when he suddenly raised his head. The ferocious expression on his face instantly turned into one of panic and despair. Ah! The short scream came to an abrupt end. The thunder and lightning blasted a huge hole in the ground. Dust and stones flew everywhere, and not even bones were left. But this time, Mu Yan was also affected a little. His clothes were scorched, and even his hair was slightly curled. Her face was frighteningly pale, and blood kept flowing from the corners of her mouth and the wounds on her body. With her frail body, she can only use the 7 absolute swords, transformed from the Tian Imo Qin to barely support herself so that she won't collapse. However, when her line of sight meets Ling Qingwan's venomous and cold eyes, the corners of Mayan's mouth once again hooks up into a lazy and mocking smile. Ling Qingwan gritted her teeth. She didn't understand why this woman could still smile when death was at hand. Why wasn't he afraid at all? What she didn't understand even more was that as the dignified young master of Tian Men, dealing with a mortal woman should have been an easy task. But why was it that she still couldn't kill this bitch after spending so much effort, losing a few trusted subordinates, and even sacrificing her primordial spirit clone? The thunder in the sky grew louder and louder. The entire Wuang Mountains had turned into a sea of fire and corpses. In just a little more time, this undulating mountain range would be completely razed to the ground. And now, the dense tribulation lightning was slowly approaching the two of them. There was no way to escape from this inescapable net. Ling Qingwan takes a deep breath, her face once again revealing a proud smile. Do you think that you've won just like that? You will definitely die under the god-slaying thunder tribulation, but I will only lose some cultivation. After you die, how long will the emperor remember you, and how long will he keep his chastity for you? Her lips curled up into a smug and cruel smile. In the end, you can only have everything you have if you're alive. There will be a day when the emperor will forget you, and be moved by my tenderness and companionship. At that time, I will still be the final winner. A trace of pain and absent-mindedness flashed through Mayan's eyes. Chapter 836. The 9 stars and the moon have been completely submerged by the thunderclouds. The dark night sky is still as bright as day, but what it brings is not fatality, but the abyss of death. Di Mingju, I'm really sorry, I can't fulfill my promise to stay with you for a lifetime. I'm really sorry for making you wait in vain. Mu Yan retracts her gaze, and it falls back on Ling Qingwan. She chuckles lowly. At this time, you still want to use the soul-absorbing spell on me. Should I say that you're stupid, or that there's something wrong with your brain? Was my previous proof not clear enough? This fairy, your mental power is far less powerful than mine. Why do you want to humiliate yourself again and again? Mu Yan's pupils shrink, a dark light flickers in her eyes. Ling Qingwan's complexion changes greatly. She suddenly holds her head, utters a mournful scream, and falls to the ground. Fresh blood flowed from her mouth and nose, making her originally beautiful face look like that of a malicious spirit. Ling Qingwan suddenly jumps up from the ground, and madly pounces towards Mu Yan. Slut, I'll kill you. Mu Yan wants to retreat, but the air suddenly condenses into ice. Her body, which was already riddled with scars, feels like it's filled with lead, and she can't move at all. Poochie. At this time, there's the sound of a sharp blade entering flesh. A severe pain comes from her abdomen. Ling Qingwan's ferocious blood-covered face is close at hand. Slut, this is the Shushan continent's one and only divine weapon, soul-binding dagger. It's useless for this fairy, but for a mortal like you, it can lock your soul, making you beg for death, unable to return to the afterlife. Mu Yan's face shows a painful expression. The dagger stabs into her abdomen, but it's like throwing a boulder into a calm lake, and in a split second, raging waves. Her 5 viscera and 6 bowels, her dantian and meridians, and her soul seem to be turned upside down at this moment. Ling Qingwan looks at her appearance and laughs. You, a mere mortal, want to compete with me? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to snatch my monarch? A lowly ant like you should obediently shrink in this dirty and disgusting place. What qualifications do you have to think about things that don't belong to you? Paw. A hand covered in blood grabs Ling Qingwan's wrist. Ling Qingwan's voice paused, and she suddenly met a pair of bottomless peach blossom eyes. The girl's voice was weak and hoarse, but it was still as beautiful as the sounds of nature. If we are ants, then you lofty, greedy, and selfish immortals who want to control the life and death of others are nothing more than disgusting and ugly maggots. Today, I finally know why the Shun musicians wanted to kill everyone in the Shushan continent. If the Shushan continent is filled with disgusting scum like you, then it would be better for all of them to die. Ling Qingwan flew into a rage. You lowly maid, you actually. Before he could finish, a rumbling sound came from the sky. The expression on Ling Qingwan's face suddenly turned into one of panic. Let go, quickly let go of me, do you hear me? You slut, let go of this fairy. Do you know who I am? I am the heaven. I don't care who you are. Mayan smiles eerily. I only know that I've said it before, that all of you present must accompany my subordinates in death. Chapter 837. See you again, never. No, don't. Let go of me, you slut. I'm going to kill you, ah. Boom. The thunderclouds fall, the rocks tumble, the dust fills the air, and it turns into nothingness. Mu Yan only feels as if her whole body has been crushed by something, and she almost faints from the pain. But she's not dead yet. Ling Qingwan's body has already been reduced to ashes, not even her bones remain. But she's still alive. The 7 absolute swords beside her emits a faint light, shrouding her. That's the divine hand weaves the heavens, launching itself. In the nick of time, it actually managed to save her life. However, this slim chance of survival only allows her to linger at death's door for a moment. The light around the 7 absolute swords flashes, and eventually disappears without a trace, turning back into the appearance of the Tian Emo Qin. Like an unremarkable zither, it falls to the ground at the side. Mu Yan lies powerlessly on the ground, looking at the thick thunderclouds in the sky, and slowly closes her eyes. Goodbye, Di Mingju. Goodbye, Xiao Bao. Nyang Qin. A crisp little voice rings in her ears. Mu Yan suddenly opens her eyes, and sees the little figure floating in the void. Her calm and indifferent face finally shows a look of panic. Xiao Bao. No, how could Xiao Bao leave the space? Didn't she already seal the space? Qi Huang. It must be that bastard Qi Huang. At this moment, she really wants to tear this trash spirit into pieces. Xiao Bao sits on the fat rabbit, and the rabbit's body expands to several times its original size, floating in the air. A beautiful fire phoenix flaps its wings, gently flying around Xiao Bao. Xiao Bao turns his head, and on his delicate and beautiful little face, there's a pair of red and swollen eyes, clearly crying. But seeing her at this moment, he shows an innocent and happy smile. Nyangqin, don't be afraid, Xiao Bao will protect you. Tears welled up in her eyes, accompanied by a terrifying pain that numbed her heart. Xiao Bao, what are you doing? Quickly return to the space. Xiao Bao shakes his head, his little face full of determination. Xiao Bao has grown up. Xiao Bao vowed to always protect Nyangqin, and never let Nyangqin come to harm. Rumble. Another bolt of lightning fell, and the fat rabbit howled as it was sent flying dozens of meters away. Mayin's originally exhausted body suddenly pounced over and hugged Xiao Bao in her arms. She didn't know where she got the strength from. Mayin's body is covered in blood and dust. But when Xiao Bao is held in Mayin's arms, he only feels an indescribable peace of mind and happiness. He likes the smell of his mother, and he likes to be with her. He didn't want to be left alone in the space by his mother. He knew that his mother was in pain, but he couldn't do anything about it. Mother, don't blame Brother Qihuang. I was the one who asked him to let me out. Mother, Xiao Bao doesn't want to be alone. Xiao Bao wants to be with you. Xiao Bao has never been afraid of death. I'm only afraid that I won't have a mother anymore. She could no longer hold back her tears, and they gushed out of her eyes. Mayin tightly hugged the little body in her arms, tightly, and was reluctant to let go. She said in a hoarse voice, "All right, regardless of life or death, Mother and Xiao Bao will not be separated." The ground beneath his feet suddenly shook. Chapter 838. The fat rabbit and Qiuqiu raise their heads and look at the sky, their eyes revealing despair. Mu Yan's heart tightens. Looking up, she sees the thick crystal thunderclouds, like Mount Tai pressing down, quickly falling down. This is the final step of the God-slaying tribulation, leaving not even a blade of grass behind. Even if there are powerful cultivators who have withstood the previous thunder tribulation with their strength, they can't withstand the final descent of the divine thunder, the massacre of 10,000 tribulations. What's more, with Mu Yan's current cultivation, she shouldn't have attracted the God-slaying tribulation, and it's impossible for her to survive the God-slaying tribulation. Mu Yan holds Xiao Bao tightly, gently patting his back, humming a tune that is out of tune. She's never been good at these things, and she's never given her baby a stable home. However, her baby is always so obedient, so considerate, filling her gloomy world with color. Xiao Bao's face shows a happy smile, rubbing against Mu Yan's arms. There's not a trace of fear of death in his eyes. He only feels that as long as he can be with his mother, he's not afraid of death. Moreover, this time, he's finally like a man, able to protect his mother. The only regret is that Daddy is not here, and their family will probably never be able to reunite again. Will Daddy miss them in the future? The thunderclouds are getting closer, closer and closer. The fat rabbit and Qiuqiu are running around, their voices panicked. But when they see the mother and son embracing, the two beasts suddenly stop all their movements, looking at the scene in front of them in shock. They see that Mu Yan and Xiao Bao's bodies are emitting a faint silver light at some point. The silver light is getting brighter and brighter, and the area it covers is getting bigger and bigger. The fat rabbit tries to walk into the silver light, but it only feels indescribably comfortable. On the ground, the originally barren land, little green grass has sprouted out at some point. The strings of the Tian Mo Chin on the side seem to be blown by the wind, trembling on their own, making broken but moving notes. The fat rabbit howls and scurries into Xiao Bao's arms. Qiu quickly flaps its wings and stops on Mu Yan's shoulder. In the space, Qi Huang looks at this scene in a daze, then reveals an inexplicable smile. Interesting, I thought it was a dead end, I didn't expect there to be a turning point. Mother and child tribulation. I thought this kind of thing didn't exist anymore. Jun Mayan, in the end, how many more surprises do you want to give this soon? I can't wait. The smile on Qi Huang's face seemed to be unable to be restrained. It was clearly an evil smile, but on his beautiful face, it looked like a mischievous youth who had successfully pulled a prank. Boom! An earth-shattering rumble shakes the entire Yanwu continent, as if it's about to be completely destroyed. But almost at the same time, a dazzling white light erupts from the Wuwang Mountains, and similarly shrouds the entire Yanwu continent. The earth-shattering momentum seemed to be nipped in the bud the moment the white light shone. The people of Yanwu continent, who are sleeping, wake up with a start. However, he could only see the night sky that was as bright as day, and the light that was gradually dissipating. The sky regained its starless and moonless darkness, and the earth fell into a deep slumber. It was as if nothing had happened, as if everything had happened yesterday. Only the vast Wuwang mountain range had been razed to the ground. Chapter 839. Not to mention Mu Yan and Xiao Bao, there wasn't even a single tree or beast. What's going on? Where's Miss? Where's the young master? What was that earth-shattering thunder just now? From the moment the thunder sounded, the people from the Hellflame Valley rushed over. However, the entire Wuwang mountain range seemed to be enveloped by a layer of enchantment, isolating it from the rest of the world and preventing anyone from entering. What happened here? Will Miss and Little Master be all right? No way. Ru Yan clenched her fists, her eyes staring at the huge pit that was smashed by the tribulation thunder. Gnashing her teeth, she said, "That's a tribulation thunder." That's right, that must be the tribulation thunder that Miss and Little Master attracted when they ascended. Miss and the others only went to the cultivation continent. That's right, it must be the thunder tribulation. Shen Jinglin shouted resolutely and decisively, as if to convince others, and also to convince himself. Yan Yan and Xiao Bao are so formidable. Yan Yan could have ascended a long time ago, it's just that she's been suppressing it. She absolutely won't die, absolutely nothing will happen to her. Yes, that must be the lightning tribulation. Back then, when Little Master had advanced to the Xiantian realm, he had attracted a terrifying lightning tribulation. Now that Little Miss had ascended, the lightning tribulation would naturally be extremely terrifying. Miss must have been afraid that we would be injured by the lightning tribulation, so she secretly came to the Wuwang mountain range. No matter how powerful the lightning tribulation is, young mistress and Little Master are even more omnipotent. They must have successfully transcended the tribulation by now and are galloping around the cultivation continent, voices kept ringing out. At first, they seemed to be comforting themselves. But slowly, everyone became more and more determined. That's right, who was Jun Mayan? She is Yanwu continent's most unique, most amazing genius for thousands of years. No, perhaps it should be said that he was an unprecedented monster. Their young master was even more unparalleled in the world. How could a mere thunder tribulation hurt their young miss and young master? We also need to work harder. Some people clenched their fists and looked at the gray sky with yearning and longing. Miss is waiting for us in that wider world. That's right. We have the spirit molding pill and the various cultivation pills that Miss left behind. We will definitely be able to advance successfully. When we reach the cultivation continent, we will also follow Miss and protect her. We, the Nether Flame Army, will live and die together and will never be separated. Through life and death, never apart. Following the tsunami of slogans, everyone's face showed a determined expression. Their eyes were blazing like fire, burning with ambition and conviction. Nothing could extinguish that kind of fire. Yan Haotian, Feng Haitang, Ru Yan and Bai Chen looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. Yes, Miss and Little Master would never die. And they absolutely did not want to stop moving forward and be left far behind by those two. They were still hoping that one day, the Nether Flame Army would be able to reunite on that vast land. Among the crowd, only Guan Hu looked around and frowned slightly. Chang Yu is not here. Did he ascend together with Miss? In the dark eastern sky, a wisp of orange-red light shone through the clouds. This desolate land that was riddled with holes was dyed with fresh colors. This used to be the Wuwang mountain range with the most exuberant life force. But now, not even a single remnant of life remained. Chapter 840. A clump of green grass grew slowly and laboriously, swaying gently in the breeze. One day, this patch of green grass would spread for tens of thousands of miles, and it would once again become the Wuwang mountain range that was filled with lush foliage and life. Just like the lives of the Yinwu continent. They were ordinary and insignificant. In the eyes of the high and mighty immortals, they were like ants, like insignificant flames. But this group of ants, these little flames, were so insignificant. As long as they were given a corner of the world, a turning point, a spark could start a prairie fire, and ants could overturn the world. Shuxian continent, Tianyi Men. In a tightly shut secret room, Ling Qingwan opened her eyes and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. On the 3 praying mats beside her, hibiscus, lily of the valley, and green bamboo had all been reduced to ashes. Ling Qingwan felt the empty spiritual power in her body, as well as the tearing pain in her body. Her eyes were filled with bone-piercing resentment. Suddenly, she thought of something and grabbed the monocular to take a look. But the surface of the 1,000-mile mirror was gray, and nothing could be seen. Only a few cracks appeared on the surface of the mirror. The monocular was destroyed, and the power of God-slaying tribulation was so powerful. 3 of his trusted subordinates were killed, half of his cultivation was lost, and the most valuable treasure of Tianyi Men was destroyed. This time, in order to kill Jun Mayan, it could be said that she paid a painful price. Unfortunately, that Tian Mo Qin, that Shin musician inheritance, she didn't manage to snatch a single one of them. Ling Qingwan's face contorted, but it was soon replaced by a maniacal laugh. So what if we suffer heavy losses? Jun Mayan, that slut was still killed by me. You want to live together with the monarch, you want to steal what belongs to me, Ling Qingwan. This is your end. Ha! Ha 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 ha, polar domain, Ling Xiaohou. The roar of thunder seemed to resound in his ears. Di Mingju abruptly sits up on the bed, his complexion deathly pale, Mayan. After a while, he stood up and walked out without hesitation. However, before he could reach the door, a few people rushed over and knelt in front of him. Lord, you can't leave this place. Di Mingju coldly looks at the people kneeling in front of him. Get lost. My lord, please listen to me. Elder Chang knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily. The mirror of heaven and earth was corroded. You forcibly tore through time and space. Both your body and primordial spirit were severely injured, and your cultivation almost dropped by a level. If you don't recuperate in this soul cultivation house, your cultivation will never recover. That day, Emperor Mingju returned and dealt with Mo roughing with the force of a thunderbolt. He forced old Ji to admit his guilt. Just as everyone is rejoicing that everything has calmed down, Di Mingju suddenly collapses. Elder Chang went up to take a look, but he was scared out of his wits. Because Di Mingju's cultivation has almost directly dropped by a layer, and his primordial spirit is even on the verge of collapse. But even with such a serious injury, no one noticed him at all. He held on until he finished dealing with everything before collapsing. The soul-nurturing house was actually a sacred ancestral artifact. It was just an ordinary stone house. There wasn't even any spiritual power in it, and it didn't look special. But this soul recovery house was a treasure that was hard to find in the world. No matter how badly his primordial spirit was injured, he could slowly recover in the soul-nurturing house. Chapter 841. However, Soul Cultivation House had a limitation. It could only be opened once every 3 years. Once it was opened, the person who entered could not leave, or the Soul Recovery House would automatically close. The next time it opened would be 3 years later. When Elder Chang and the others see that Di Mingju is seriously injured, they quickly open the Soul Cultivation House and send him inside. Now, if Di Mingju leaves, the Soul Cultivation House will close, and his injuries will never be healed. Therefore, even if Elder Chang and the others disobey Di Mingju's orders, they will never allow him to leave. Moreover, if Di Mingju's cultivation really falls, and this news spreads out, it would be a fatal blow to the polar domain. So what? Di Mingju's voice is bone-chilling. I said I want to leave. Do you want to disobey Ben Jun's orders? This subordinate wouldn't dare. Elder Chang hurriedly said, My lord, are you leaving to look for Miss June, the thunder tribulation that shook the Yanwu continent? It wasn't just the people there who heard it. The people of the Shushan continent were also shocked. Many people recognized it as the God-slaying tribulation. Di Mingju's hand suddenly clenches, the bottom of his eyes surging with billowing waves. He shouldn't have come back. In any case, he should have stayed by Mu Yan's side. The God-slaying tribulation was a God-slaying tribulation. Back then, he had barely survived it. How could Mu Yan get through this safely? Di Mingju's figure flickered and was about to leave. Even if he has to risk his cultivation, he must go to Mayan's side. Stop Jun Shang. Eldest brother Chang roars. His whole body pounces over, and he hugs Di Mingju's feet. Star Wolf, Han Yi, and Ing Mei all firmly hold Di Mingju in place, not letting him take a single step out of the soul cultivation house. My lord, listen to me. Your marriage lines have not disappeared and there are no changes. That proves that Miss June is definitely still alive. Ing Mei falls to his knees on the ground, his voice choked with sobs. He kowtows heavily towards Di Mingju. Jun Shang, this subordinate once formed a binding heart curse with the Little Master. This subordinate dares to use his life to guarantee that the Little Master is still alive. Mu Yan was still alive, and so was Xiao Bao. These two pieces of news make the almost insane killing intent in Di Mingju's eyes fade a little. Elder Chang heaved a sigh of relief and quickly said, although the God-slaying tribulation is difficult, it's not undefeatable. Although Miss June's cultivation was low, she had never been an ordinary person. Perhaps she really survived the God-slaying tribulation, and left the Yanwu continent. Jun Shang, even if you go to the Yanwu continent now, I'm afraid that you won't be able to see Miss June. That's right, once she passes the thunder tribulation, no matter what kind of thunder tribulation it is, it's impossible for Mayan to stay in the Yanwu continent. Therefore, if she was still safe and alive, she should be somewhere on the cultivation continent. Elder Chang slowly releases Di Mingju's feet and respectfully kneels on the ground. Jun Shang, this is actually a good thing. Miss June's ascension to the Shushan continent means that she's one step closer to you. the Xiuzhen continent is not like the Yanwu continent. Even if you want to go there, there won't be that many obstacles, but the premise is that you have the ability to protect Miss June Shang. Could it be that you've forgotten Miss June's identity? If she appears in the cultivation continent and even in the cultivation continent in the future, how many people will want her life and everything she has? Chapter 842. Elder Chang slowly raises his head, looking straight into Di Mingju's eyes. He enunciates each word. Do you want the tragedy of the Shin musicians to repeat itself on Miss June? Di Mingju's pupils suddenly contract, the madness in his eyes is slowly replaced by coldness and determination. Elder Chang's words are very respectful, very gentle, but each word is like a needle, piercing the bloody truth. He is the emperor of the polar domain, he can't disregard the tens of thousands of lives in the polar domain. Even more so, he can't lose the ability to protect Mayan. Otherwise, when Mayan's identity as a Shin musician is exposed, she will be consigned to eternal damnation. And he can only look on helplessly as those sanctimonious, greedy people tear Mayan apart. June Shang, this subordinate, is willing to go to the Xiuzhen continent and look for Miss June. As soon as Ing Mei's words leave her mouth, she is interrupted by Elder Chang. No, before June Shang recovers his cultivation and comes out of the soul cultivation house, none of you can go to Miss June, let alone approach her. Ing Mei jerks her head up, her eyes filled with anxiety and guilt. If June Shang hadn't been protecting her and Han Yi during the tearing of time and space, he wouldn't have suffered such a heavy injury. Elder Chang sighs, the Xiuzhen continent is not like the Yanwu continent. Everything that happens there will be seen by many people here. Once you look for and approach Miss June, it will only make many people focus their attention on Miss June, which will bring about a fatal disaster to Miss June. Ing Mei sucks in a mouthful of cold air, dejectedly lowering her head. Han Yi gently holds her hand, softly saying, "Don't worry, Miss June is so powerful, she must know how to protect herself." Di Mingju's hand clenches into a fist, then loosens a little. It's as if Mayan's words are still echoing in his ears. If you know me well enough to want to spend a lifetime with me, then don't say such apologies. I'm not a daughter flower that attaches itself to you. I won't leave you in life and death, but it's impossible for you to stay by my side and protect me all the time. That way, I will lose my courage, lose myself, and become unlike Mayan. Di Mingju closes his eyes. When he opens them again, he has already restored his cold tranquility. At this time, the imposing manner around his body has once again returned to that of the polar domain's emperor. He slowly walked back to the bed and sat down. It was clearly a simple and crude bedroom with a luxurious stone bed, but because of his existence, it instantly became like a high and mighty Lingshao palace. Star Wolf's eyes shone with a blazing light, filled with reverence. This was their emperor, a natural-born king. He was the person Star Wolf swore to be loyal to for the rest of his life. The only flaw was the woman who bewitched the god monarch. To actually let the sovereign monarch take risks again and again, to the extent that he completely disregarded the safety of the polar domain and himself. It would be great if that woman could die on the cultivation continent. The Star Wolf lowers his eyes, concealing the murderous intent in them. He respectfully and obediently kneels in front of Di Mingju. Send the order to the cultivation continent. The man's low and cold voice slowly sounded in this little stone house. 3 days later, the polar domain, Jasper Banquet, will be held. Elder Chang's eyes widened, and it took him a while to recover from the shock. The Jasper Banquet was a grand event that was held once every 10 years in the polar domain. Its purpose was to select concubines for the polar domain's emperor. But ever since Di Mingju became the polar domain's sovereign, the Jasper Banquet has never been held again. Chapter 843. But today, Jun Shang actually wants to hold the Jasper banquet. Di Mingju slightly narrows his eyes, and an invisible pressure spreads out in the stone house. What? Didn't you hear Ben Jun's order clearly? No, no. This subordinate will go and prepare. Everyone retreats in confusion, until only one person is left. Di Mingju opens his palm, and looks at the faintly flickering runes on it. His cold and stern eyes reveal a bone-piercing tenderness and longing. Yen Yen, wait for me. The news that the polar domain is going to hold the Jasper banquet spreads throughout the entire Shushan continent almost in a flash. Young Master, Di Jun is going to hold the Jasper banquet. Will he announce that you are his divine empress at the Jasper banquet? In order to kill Mayan, Ling Qingwan lost 3 of her trusted subordinates. Right now, she only has Ziwan by her side. Ziwan hands over the invitation to the Jasper banquet, her face full of excitement and agitation. Ling Qingwan is ecstatic at first, but the scene of Di Mingju holding Mayan suddenly flashes before her eyes. Her face distorts, and she comforts herself, so what if that slut had seduced Di Jun? Now that that slut is dead, wouldn't the position of Polar Domain's mistress still belong to her? Di Jun holding the Jasper banquet at this moment is certainly because he's tired of that slut, and wants to select the real divine empress. And looking at the entire Shushan continent, who else is more suitable than herself to become the mistress of Polar Domain? 3 days later, the Jasper banquet begins. Although it's only 3 days, many immortals who are far away simply can't make it. But on the day of the Jasper banquet, the Lingshao Hall of the Polar Domain is still filled with guests from various forces. Among these guests, the majority of them were young girls with lustful expressions. Each and every one of them is looking at the high and lofty throne. Even if it's still empty, it doesn't prevent them from fantasizing about how heroic and otherworldly the master of that throne is, how a monarch descending upon the world would make people look up to him. Ling Qingwan's gaze sweeps over the women present, and she proudly raises her head, letting out a disdainful snort. Ziwan immediately says with disdain, these women should take a piss and take a look at themselves. How dare they think of Di Jun, they aren't even fit to carry Miss shoes. Because the Jasper banquet was held in a hurry, Di Mingju didn't even send people to inform many places. Therefore, those who came this time were all small sects and schools in the periphery, or forces attached to the polar domain. The status of the women sent over by these sects and forces naturally couldn't be compared to Ling Qingwan, the young mistress of the Tiani men. Sure enough, after those women found out Ling Qingwan's identity, each and every one of them revealed an envious expression. Some whispers even reached Ling Qingwan's ears. That is Tian men's young master, one of Shushan continent's 3 great beauties, Qingwan Fairy. For the polar domain to hold the exquisite pearl banquet this time in such a hurry, presumably they had already decided on the candidate for the divine empress. The rest is just a formality. The candidate for the divine empress must be Fairy Qingwan. It's really enviable. I heard that the polar domain and the Tiani men already had an engagement long ago. I'll be satisfied as long as I can become the emperor's concubine. I don't dare to compete with Fairy Qingwan for the position of divine empress. Chapter 844. The corners of Ling Qingwan's mouth behind the veil hooked up into a haughty smile. Her pair of eyes stared fixedly at the throne. Imagining herself nestled in the emperor's embrace and receiving the attention of tens of thousands of people, she felt indescribably carefree. The emperor has arrived. The announcement silenced the entire hall. Then, a tall figure slowly walked over and casually sat on the throne. Everyone's gazes were focused on that person. Following that, the sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard in the hall. Everyone knew the name of the polar domain Empyrean, but only a few people had seen the real Empyrean. At this moment, many young girls' hearts were beating crazily, as if they were about to jump out of their mouths. How could there be such a handsome man in this world? Originally, he thought that the high and mighty emperor only had monstrous power, but it turned out that even his appearance was unparalleled in the world. If she could gain his favor and be by his side, she would be willing to die. Originally, these girls were only a little jealous of Ling Qingwan. But now, when he thought that Ling Qingwan could become the wife of such a deity, he simply went crazy with jealousy. Ling Qingwan foolishly looks at Di Mingju sitting in the seat of honor. Her eyes are filled with infatuation. After a long while, she finally stood up, took a few steps forward, and slowly bowed. "Greetings, Emperor." After bowing, she raised her head and revealed a smile that was just right, gentle and worried. "I haven't seen you for a few days. Emperor seems to have lost a lot of weight. Qingwan has refined some elixirs that can replenish blood and nourish qi. Emperor, please accept them." As she spoke, she took out a bottle of pills. When the people around her saw the elixir in her hand, their eyes were filled with excitement. Everyone knew that the medicinal pills refined by the Heaven's Physician sect were priceless and the best. What's more, it was personally refined by the Tianyi men's young master. Ling Qingwan maintains a proper smile on her face, waiting for the person next to Di Mingju to take the elixir from her hand. However, 1 breath passed, 2 breaths passed, 3 breaths passed. Ling Qingwan's hands were sore, but no one came over to receive the medicine. Old Ji, who had always flattered and fawned over her, was not even in the main hall. The smile on Ling Qingwan's face finally froze. She didn't know whether she should hand out the pill or take it back. Many people in the hall had already started to point at her and whisper among themselves. At this moment, Di Mingju slowly opens his mouth. This monarch heard that the Polar Domain and the Heaven Physician sect had once set up an engagement. "Is that true?" Elder Chang hurriedly said, replying to the emperor. This marriage agreement was set verbally between the previous emperor of the Polar Domain and sect master Lang of the Tianyi men. Di Mingju nods, his gaze sweeping over everyone present. Ben Jun has convened the Jasper banquet today precisely for this matter. The stiff smile on Ling Qingwan's face slowly returned to normal. His eyes lit up with a resplendent light. Sure enough, the reason why Jun Shang is holding the Jasper banquet is to fulfill the engagement and announce her as the Extreme Domain's Divine Empress. She discreetly took back the bottle of medicinal pills, then revealed a shy smile and said softly, "Marriage is the order of parents and the words of a matchmaker." Since this engagement was set by Master for Qingwan, Qingwan naturally is willing. Moreover, Qingwan's admiration for the emperor has never changed. Everyone's envious gazes fall on Ling Qingwan. Although the Tianyi men is powerful, and can be compared to the polar domain that rules over half of the Shushan continent, it's still far from enough. Chapter 845. Di Mingju slightly narrows his eyes, the corner of his mouth hooks up into a sneer of ridicule. His gaze seems to sweep past Ling Qingwan with disgust, looking at everyone present. Everyone, witness, Ben Jun declares that the engagement between Ji Domain and Tianyi men is cancelled. Ling Qingwan has never been Ben Jun's fiancée. From now on, whoever dares to spread such rumors will be severely punished. Whoosh! Di Mingju's words are like a boulder thrown into a calm lake, setting off great waves in a split second. What's going on? Wasn't it said that Qingwan Fairy was going to be announced as the Divine Empress at the Jade Banquet? How could it be called off the engagement? I also heard that Di Jun is deeply in love with Qingwan Fairy, and doesn't let any woman get close to him, but only gets close to Qingwan Fairy. So all of this was just a rumor. Could it be that these rumors were spread by Qingwan Fairy? This is too shameless. The chattering sounds of discussion reach Ling Qingwan's ears, but she only feels like her brain is roaring, and she can't hear anything clearly. Her face is deathly pale, and her body is on the verge of collapse. Especially when those young girls who were just jealous of her are now pointing at her with ridiculing expressions. It makes her wish that she could find a hole to crawl into. Di-jun, why? How can you treat me like this? Ling Qingwan finally can't bear it, and shouts loudly. She rushes forward, wanting to grab Di Mingju's hand, but he ruthlessly shakes it off in disgust. Ling Qingwan awkwardly falls to the ground, and the gauze covering her face is lifted, revealing her pale and distorted face. The surrounding young girls let out waves of disdainful ridicule. Oh, I originally heard that Qingwan Fairy is one of the 3 great beauties of Shushan continent, and I thought she was very good-looking, but it turns out that she's nothing more than this. That's right, she's not as beautiful as Sister Qinglian, no wonder Di-jun doesn't like her. With this kind of appearance, she still has the nerve to call herself one of the 3 great beauties. If she wasn't Di-jun's fiancée, do you think she would have a place in the 3 great beauties? Everyone's ridiculing laughter, pointing and humiliating fingers, makes Ling Qingwan feel like the world is spinning. She had been at the top all her life and was sought after and envied by others. When had she ever suffered such public humiliation? This kind of humiliation was even more unbearable than losing half of her cultivation. It was even more unbearable than death. Di Mingju. Ling Qingwan screams hysterically, "How can you do this to me? The engagement was set by your father and my master. You can't cancel it. You must marry me." Di Mingju stands up and condescendingly looks at her. What if Ben Jun doesn't marry? Why? What's wrong with me? I'm the young lord of Tianyi Men. I know how to refine medicine, and my talent is top-notch. How am I not worthy of you? Why are you doing this to me? Di Mingju slightly narrows his eyes, his exceptionally handsome face slowly hooking up into an evil and callous smile. Ben Jun feels disgusted just by looking at you. Marrying you is worse than marrying a sow. Are you satisfied with this reason? Ling Qingwan's eyes suddenly widened, her chest heaved up and down violently, and her eyes turned white. The wound that she had already suppressed erupted again. She suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, almost at her last gasp. Chapter 846. Finished speaking, Di Mingju doesn't stay any longer, and turns to leave. Elder Chang watches as Di Mingju's figure disappears. His line of sight falls on the shocked and excited crowd, as well as Ling Qingwan, who is lying on the ground, looking as if she could faint and die at any moment. He curls his lips and sneers. Were the people of Tianyi Men really a bunch of idiots? Because of the kindness of those years, Di-jun had always been courteous to the people of Tianyi Men. Even if Ling Qingwan was spreading rumors outside, she had never thought of punishing him to clear his name. However, he didn't expect that Ling Qingwan would unexpectedly reach for a yard after being given an inch. She was so audacious that she dared to interfere in the internal affairs of the polar domain. Did they really think that the emperor was a gentle and harmless person that they could manipulate and slaughter at will? Ha! Little did they know that sometimes, the emperor was the most ruthless and narrow-minded person. Especially when someone touched his reverse scale, touched the person he cared about the most. After today, the news that Di Mingju despises Ling Qingwan for being disgusting and inferior to a sow will spread throughout the entire Shushan continent. From then on, when people talked about Ling Qingwan, she was no longer a cold and aloof fairy that people envied. Instead, she was a scheming and shameless woman whom the god monarch despised. For Ling Qingwan, who cared about face and vanity the most, this was 100 times more painful than killing her. Sure enough, no matter who you offend, you can't offend an emperor. Elder Chang shook his head with a smile and announced loudly, "The exquisite dragon banquet has come to an end. Everyone, please return." One day, the polar domain would hold the real Jasper banquet. Wait until the moment when their true mistress, their holy queen, descends. The people in the Lingshao hall gradually dispersed. Although the immortal jade banquet had started and ended abruptly, although the dreams of these young girls and their sects to soar into the sky had not come true. However, not many people felt regretful. Instead, they were all excited. She couldn't wait to immediately spread the news that Ling Qingwan and Tian Yimen had been abandoned by Polar Domain's monarch in public. In the soul-nurturing house, Di Mingju's body, lying on the stone bed, suddenly opens his eyes. His complexion was a bit pale. This time, forcefully separating his primordial spirit to leave the soul-nurturing house made his injuries even worse. The time needed to recuperate would also be longer. But he did not regret it. If it weren't for Ling Qingwan and Elder Mo Ruffing wouldn't have been forced to separate from Mu Yen. Now he was unable to leave the soul cultivation house and was unable to obliterate the Tian Yimen. At the very least, he would make Ling Qingwan pay a painful price. Di Mingju spreads out his hand, and gently kisses the lines on his palm. In a split second, he changes from being full of hostility to being as gentle as water. Yen Yen, Xiaobao, wait for me. He repeated it again and again, as if it were the most devout vow. Yen Yen, wait for me. Yen Yen, wait for me. Yen Yen, I will definitely return to your side. Yen Yen. Yen Yen, Mu Yen suddenly opened his eyes, but he only felt pain all over his body, as if it was about to fall apart. She sucked in a breath of cold air and let out a low moan. But then, she felt that something was wrong. As he breathed, cool spiritual energy flowed into his meridians. It felt like she was cultivating next to the spirit vein in the space, but the spirit chi here was much thicker than in the space, just not as pure as in the space. Where was she? What happened? That's right, thunder tribulation. God-slaying thunder tribulation. Mu Yen abruptly sat up from the ground and looked all around, Xiaobao. However, what she saw was a messy house, not the thunderous Wuwang Mountains. Chapter 847. Hearing Mayan's shouts, an angry curse comes from beside her, so noisy, do you want to make me deaf? Mayan turns her head to take a look. She sees a beautiful woman sitting not far from her, but her hair is disheveled, her clothes are covered in dust, and there's a trace of panic and fear in her eyes. Where is this place? Mayan asks in a daze. Unfortunately, no one pays attention to her. Those young girls only care about crying. Mayan presses her aching and swollen temples, and her divine sense sinks into the space. She thinks she'll see Xiaobao in the space, but she's disappointed. Looking at the empty space, Mayan's heart sinks a little. Qihuang, Qihuang. Get the hell out here. However, the space is still deathly silent, and there's not even the slightest response. Xiaobao. Thinking that something might have happened to Xiaobao, Mayan's eyes redden. Just then, a timid voice reaches her ear. Beautiful sister, don't worry, little brother is fine. Mayan's divine sense turns, and soon finds a red fireball lying in the space tower. It's Chocho, just that Chocho used to be in the fire phoenix form. Now, it's turned back into a ball. Chocho was touched by the god-slaying thunder tribulation a little, so it can't return to its phoenix form for a while. Boo-hoo-hoo, beautiful sister, don't dislike Chocho. Mayan promptly touches her with her mental power. Good Chocho, tell me, why are you here? Where's Xiaobao? Chocho doesn't know where little brother is, but Chocho's fire phoenix doppelganger can sense that it's in a very, very comfortable place. Not only is little brother fine, but he's also getting stronger. Chocho is little brother's contracted beast. Little brother's power is pouring into Chocho, and Qiu will soon become a beautiful phoenix. Fireball excitedly twirls around as it speaks. The little phoenix's words were incoherent, but Mayan finally understood. When the god-slaying thunder tribulation finally fell, she and Xiao Bao don't know why, but powerful energy erupted from them. It miraculously allowed them to successfully cross the tribulation and ascend. Therefore, she's no longer in the Yanwu continent, but in the Shuzhen continent. It was no wonder that when she operated her dantian and even when she breathed casually, she could feel the presence of spiritual energy. This was because this wasn't a desolate continent devoid of spiritual energy, but a paradise that cultivators yearn for even in their dreams, the cultivation continent. However, in the process of ascension, due to the time difference when passing through the spatial barrier, she and Xiao Bao were separated. At that time, Little Phoenix just happened to be by Mu Yan's side. It was too late to return to Xiao Bao's body, so it could only send its Fire Phoenix clone to Xiao Bao's body. Beautiful sister, don't worry. Qiu knows very well whether little brother is good or not. It's just that little big bro is very far away from us right now. Qiu's cultivation base is not high enough, so he cannot sense little big bro's location. Mu Yan gently touches the ball, looking grateful. Qiu, you've already done very well. Thank you. If it wasn't for Little Phoenix, she wouldn't know about Xiao Bao's safety and would probably go crazy from worry. Now, at least he knew that his darling was safe and sound. The only thing she had to do was to find her baby. Oh, pretty sister is praising Qiu. He, I'm so happy. Chapter 848. The fiery ball spins around in the air, giggling foolishly. Mu Yan watches for a while, then withdraws her mental power from the space. Almost at the same time, she hears a woman scream. Ah! Where is this? Big sister, little sister, why are we locked up here? Boo-hoo-hoo, I'm scared, I don't want to stay here. Big sister, little sister, save me. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. If you hadn't controlled your temper and clashed with others, would we have been plotted against? Would we have been locked up here? If we can't make it to the sex selection because of you, see if I don't peel off your skin. Mu Yan looks sideways and finds that the one speaking is the woman who just cursed her. The two unconscious girls lying beside her had woken up, which was why they were making such a ruckus. From their conversation, Mu Yan learns that these three girls are apprentice sisters. The big sister is called Wu Fangyi, the woman who just cursed Mu Yan. The crying one is the second sister, Qin Xiu. And the youngest girl, who looks like a clear white lotus, is called Lu Ruoxuan. The three of them had a conflict with someone on the street. Qin Xiu was unruly and headstrong, and couldn't bear the loss, so she taught someone a lesson. She didn't expect that they would turn around and be drugged. When they wake up again, they are already in this dilapidated house. Lu Ruoxuan gently comforts the collapsed Qin Xiu, second sister, don't cry, I believe that Big Brother and the others will definitely come to save us. But I don't want to stay here for even a moment. Why are we locked up here? Qin Xiu cries, let me out. Let me out. I don't want to stay here. Boo-hoo-hoo. Don't cry, you're already in here and you still want to leave, stop dreaming. A haggard woman on the side can't help but say. Qin Xiu glares at her, what is this place? Why did you catch us? The woman looks at her with pity, and after a long while, she slowly says, this is Heavenly Fragrance Building. What is Heavenly Fragrance Building? Qin Xiu is just about to ask where Heavenly Fragrance Building is when she sees Wu Fangyi and Lu Ruoxuan's faces change. At this time, Qin Xiu also remembers, and the expression on her face instantly turns into horror. Heavenly Fragrance Building, isn't that a brothel? Why did you lock us up here? Chen Xiuxiu rushed over and slammed on the door. Let me out. Let me out. I don't want to become a lowly prostitute. I want to leave this place. Someone, let me out. Woo woo woo. Mu Yan wrinkles her brows. She didn't expect that the moment she arrived at the cultivation continent, she would be caught and brought to a brothel. It was probably because she had passed out from the god-slaying thunder tribulation that someone had picked her up. Recalling the god-slaying thunder tribulation, Mu Yan hurriedly examined her body. Soon after, she was pleasantly surprised to find that her cultivation had actually broken through the Enidia realm. As early as when she was in the Yanwu continent, she already knew that the levels in the Xiuzhen continent are divided into forging body, Enidia, Jindan, nascent soul, astral projection, crossing tribulation. Every major realm was further divided into 9 minor realms, from the 1st to the 9th level. Currently, Mayan's cultivation is just at the 1st level of fasting. The strangest thing was that when ordinary people ascended, their sea of qi would disappear and turn into their dantian. But when she was in Yanwu continent, her dantian had already coexisted with her qi sea. Chapter 849. It's just that there's very little internal force on the Xiuzhen continent, so when she revolves her qi sea, she can only condense a little bit of internal force. But when she revolves her dantian, pure spiritual power surges into her meridians like a tide, making her feel so comfortable that she wants to sigh. It seems that this time, she really profited from a disaster. The god-slaying thunder tribulation has made her body and talent even more perfect. We're about to be defiled, and you can still laugh. Slut, are you born to like being played with by men? Looking at your foxy appearance, I know that you're that smelly, shameless whore. Mayan is immersed in the carefree feeling of spiritual power cleansing her meridians. Suddenly, she feels a swift and fierce attack coming towards her. She suddenly opens her eyes and sees Chen Xiuxiu ruthlessly kicking her. Mayan doesn't even think about it as she grabs her ankle and ruthlessly flings it. Ah! Chen Xiuxiu howls like a pig being butchered. She falls to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. She cries and points at Mayan, roaring, You actually dare to attack me. Mayan sneers, If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. You can't control those feet of yours, do you want me to chop them off for you and properly discipline them? Chen Xiuxiu's entire person is stunned from the fall. After a long while, she comes back to her senses and lets out a painful groan. Seeing this, Wu Fangyi and Lu Ruoxuan quickly rush over to help her up. Second sister, are you okay? Lu Ruoxuan's face is full of worry. Chen Xiuxiu slowly comes back to her senses and pushes Lu Ruoxuan away. She viciously pounces towards Mayan, What are you actually dare to hit me? Look at your foxy and shameless appearance, you're clearly the stuff that seduces men, where did this ant say anything wrong? This time, she revolves the spiritual power in her body ahead of time, and her hands are instantly covered with a layer of frost. However, when that fierce attack arrives in front of Mayan, she casually catches it. Then, Mayan raises her hands and ruthlessly slaps her face. The next moment, an ice-cold dagger is pressed against Chen Xiuxiu's neck. Mu Yan's beautiful peach blossom eyes were very close, but what rippled within them was not a bright and beautiful wave of light, but a bone-chilling killing intent. It seems that what you don't want is not your feet, but your head. Since that's the case, how about I cut it off for you right now? Chen Xiuxiu's body froze, and the anger on her face instantly turned into fear. His body trembled slightly, but he did not dare to move. You, don't mess around. I'm a disciple of the Bright Moon sect. If you kill me, my senior brother won't let you off. Lu Ruoxuan also quickly rushes over, bowing and apologizing to Mu Yan, Miss, I'm sorry. My senior sister has a bad temper, but she doesn't have any bad intentions. Please forgive her. Mu Yan slightly narrows her eyes, and with a casual fling, Chen Xiuxiu is directly thrown out. Lu Ruoxuan was pleasantly surprised and repeatedly thanked her. He couldn't help but glance at her, seemingly curious and probing. A timid expression appeared on her lotus-like face. Miss, may I know where you are from? How did you get caught by the people of the Heavenly Fragrance Building? Mu Yan coldly glanced at her, but didn't pay attention to her. Without saying anything, she walked to a corner and continued her cultivation. Chapter 850. This time, Chen Xiuxiu is confused, the handprint on her face is even more swollen. Her eyes are filled with resentment, like she couldn't wait to dismember Mayan. But thinking of the strength that Mayan had just displayed, she doesn't dare to act rashly again. She can only cry and curse. Just then, the door to the room is suddenly pushed open. Several men with big, stocky waists and bare upper bodies walk in. The man in the lead has a knife scar on his face, and he holds a black whip in his hand. His cold and evil eyes sweep over everyone present. Soon after, a cackle is heard, accompanied by a sticky and disgusting sound. It seems that the quality of the goods that have been delivered this time is pretty good. Chen Xiuxiu couldn't help but rush over and shout, "Do you still have the law? I'm the daughter of an elder of the Bright Moon sect. If you dare to touch me, my father won't let you off. Let me out, quickly let me out." Seeing Chen Xiuxiu rush over, the corner of the knife-scarred man's mouth hooks up into a sneer. He suddenly raises the whip in his hand and ruthlessly lashes at Chen Xiuxiu. Chen Xiuxiu immediately screams and falls to the ground. She groans incessantly, unable to get up for a long time. The knife-scarred man's sinister gaze sweeps over everyone present. Is there anyone else who dares to make a ruckus? Everyone in the room goes silent out of fear. Just then, a manservant runs in from outside and says a few words in the knife-scarred man's ear. The knife-scarred man narrows his eyes and immediately looks at the girls in the room with ill intentions. "That's great. I didn't expect that there would be customers who want goods just after you were delivered. Among you, is there anyone with a water spirit root, and the quality is 3rd grade or higher?" The room is silent. The girls are in fear and trepidation, no one dares to speak. The knife-scarred man sneers, "Don't want to say? Then don't blame this uncle for being impolite." He swings the whip in his hand, and a delicate and pretty girl is caught. The knife-scarred man's hand ruthlessly grabs her dantian. The girl lets out a mournful scream, her whole body bending into a bow. The knife-scarred man disinterestedly curls his lips, "TCH, just a waste with a 5th grade spirit root." As he spoke, he waved his hand and tossed it to one of his subordinates beside him. He said nonchalantly, "It's yours. You can play with it however you want as long as you don't kill it and can still receive customers." The subordinate took the young girl and glanced at her delicate and pretty appearance. His face was filled with greed and excitement. He thanked the knife-scarred man and immediately dragged him into the small house. "No, let me go. Let me go. Woo woo woo. Slut." It was the sound of a slap. "You still want to maintain your innocence after entering the Heavenly Fragrance restaurant? I will take your virginity now, ha ha ha. This skin is really smooth and tender, much better than the last one. Aw. Help. Help." The young girl's screams for mercy and the man's vulgar curses and panting seemed to fade away bit by bit. The faces of all the girls in the rundown house were deathly pale, and their bodies were shivering. Some of the more timid ones were already crying out loud. Even Chen Xiuxiu curled up into a ball, not daring to say another word. The knife-scarred man looks at their performance with satisfaction, and says with a sinister smile, "All right, now can you tell me, who has a 3rd grade or higher water spirit root?" Chapter 851. If after the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, there is still no one with a third-grade water spirit root to step out, then don't blame me for testing them one by one. At that time, those who are found to have poor spirit roots. The knife-scarred man did not finish his words, but looked meaningfully at his subordinate beside him. His subordinate immediately revealed a wretched smile, and even licked his lips, looking like he was eager to enjoy it. But the girls in the house were filled with despair, so scared that they were about to cry. The knife-scarred man laughed cruelly. Every time new goods came, he loved to play with these fresh and delicious girls like a cat catching mice. He would crush their dignity, conscience, desire, bit by bit. In the end, after their bodies were destroyed, they would become prostitutes in heavenly fragrance brothel who put on makeup and sold their bodies. One must know, the reason why Heavenly Fragrance Brothel's business was so good these few years, other than having a powerful backing, the most important reason was that they could find good goods, and train these women to be obedient. The door of the house was closed again. The inside fell into a dead silence. Despair, fear and hope, accompanied by crying, lingered in the air. Finally, someone could not help but break the silence. Who has a water spirit root? Come out yourself, okay? I don't want to be defiled, I already have a fiancé. If I am to be defiled by those beasts, I might as well die. Sob, sob, sob. I also don't want to be defiled, I have an earth spirit root. Who has a water spirit root? Save us, please. We don't want to all end up like that. Yes, yes. 2 people being defiled is better than all of us being defiled, right? My father found out that I am missing, he will definitely come to save me, as long as we can survive these few days, all of us will be saved. Yes, yes, my senior brother and master will definitely come to save me, I definitely do not want to become the lowest of prostitutes. Sob, sob, sob. The voices of the girls in the house changed from the begging and fear at the beginning, to full of hope. They all felt that as long as they survived this time, their loved ones would definitely come to save them. But the prerequisite was that they had to hand over 2 people with water spirit root, to be the customers' cauldrons. Wei Z, I know you have a water spirit root, right? Suddenly, a young girl's voice rang out, interrupting everyone's conversation. Everyone's gazes immediately followed the direction of the man's finger and landed on a girl. The girl's appearance could only be considered delicate and pretty. She was very young, looking to be only 15 or 16 years old. When everyone's gaze landed on her, her entire face instantly turned snow white. His body trembled like a sieve. No. I'm not, the quality of my water spirit root is not good. Senior Sister Yunxiang, you clearly know my cultivation. The woman who had just spoken hurriedly interrupted her. Wei Zi, don't lie anymore. Even Master said that you are extraordinarily talented. Your water spirit root's quality is definitely above 3rd grade. Can you not be so selfish? As long as you sacrifice yourself, you can save all of us. Are you going to leave us to die? That's great. The other girls immediately beamed with joy. We finally found a water spirit root. No. I don't want to become a cauldron. Wei Zi cried out in fear. Seeing these women approaching, she screamed and tried to escape. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.